casually, so that's why I didn't move.
My digital device says it's 6 o'clock, so I'm going to use this time to the regular meeting of the Destin City Council, November 4th, 2019. I'm going to call it to order. First up, we have an invocation by Pastor Todd Walker. Pastor Walker.
Thank you. If you'll pray with me. Dear God, our Father in heaven, thank you for this day. Thank you for the time that we have to be here this evening. Father, thank you for these men and women who lead this community. And Father, we want to pray a special prayer this evening that you will be with them, that you'll give them wisdom, you'll give them insight, and you'll guide their directions. Father, we thank you for the work that they do, and we know that it's a work appointed by you. Father, we pray that you'll bless them and their families. And Father, as citizens, we pray that you will allow us to give them the support that they need to do their jobs well. We ask this prayer in Jesus' most holy name. Amen.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, join us to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item of the day is the agenda approval.
Motion.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Let me find my little apparatus here. We're getting to it here in just a second. Unanimous, so moved. Tonight, we have two items. Thank you, sir. And before I call Mr. Ronnie Bell up here, I do want to make one thing, an announcement, PS8. We are hosting the USPCA qualification, certification process for canine units from around the country. I welcomed the officers and to Destin and the Panhandle last night at their meeting, and today I went by there about 11 o'clock and watched some of the competition that these dogs are going through to be certified. So I'd encourage anyone that would really like to see some magnificent animals at work. Tomorrow they'll be doing their testing and competition from 8 a.m. to 4. And on Wednesday and Thursday, they're actually going to go from 6 to 4. And on those 2 days, they'll be doing some of their bite training, which is some of the cooler things to watch. Today it was jumping over walls and barriers and stuff like that. So I just want to invite the general public to, if they want to see some tremendously trained animals, to swing by Morgan Sports Center tomorrow or Wednesday or Thursday. With that being said, we have to do the approval of the minutes of August 19th, 2019 regular city council minute.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Vote is unanimous, so moved. Up next, we got Mr. Ronnie Bell, Waste Management, with an update for services of the City of Destin. Take it away, sir.
Mayor, I think I'm already hot, right? The red light's on? Okay, that was good. Ronnie Bell, Waste Management. Thank you, Mayor, Council, for the opportunity to be here tonight. I had about a 45-minute presentation prepared till the mayor told me 4 or 5 minutes. I won't even take that long, Mayor. But
you're welcome, people.
Just to let everybody know, and I think all of you probably already know this, Okaloosa County entered into the contract with ECUA week before last. It kicked off November the 1st, which was Friday, and your recyclables were on the loads going with Okaloosa County's recyclables to ECUA in Pensacola. What does that mean? No change. I'm not here to say we need additional money. I'm not here to say that we're not doing this, we're not doing that. The only thing I would advise you is that we did continue to keep the contract with Repower South in Montgomery. We have it in place in case there's an issue somewhere down the line. The only thing I would just sort of put in the back of your mind is in that Repower South, if that contract had continued and there had not been an ECUA contract to go back to, we would have been here before you to discuss glass. Because when we entered into the contract, they were going to help us all because they knew that we were all in sort of a bind the way that thing went down with ECUA, and they were going to take it to start with. But just to put that in the back of your mind somewhere down the line, of course, glass, as we know, is the most weight in the recyclables anyway. But ECUA continues to have an outlet for it, and they continue to accept it. So,
Have they hinted of a timeline before that might become an issue, or they just kind of leave it open-ended at this point concerning the glass?
ECUA, they've not hinted. They say they have an outlet for it, so they'll continue to take it. But as we all know, the recycling market is very volatile right now. So again, just in the back of everybody's mind, we may be coming back somewhere down the line.
Anybody else have any questions?
Oh, welcome. Thank you for putting me first.
Thanks, sir.
Y'all have a good night.
Drive safe. All right, next, updates on Radio Point, Phase 3, Pierce Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, I did it right this time. I'm here to give you the 90% update. I'll make it brief tonight. There's not a lot to see on the plans you haven't seen before. The main thing with the 90% above the last set of plans is there's far more detail, construction detail. So I'm not going to go into that. If there's any questions you have, I know you all have it on your computers, so if you've looked at the plans and have any questions on it, I'll be glad to answer what I can, and our engineer is here tonight as well. The only thing I wanted to show in particular is that is the proposed entrance sign. That was not on the plans last time you looked. That plan sign is sort of modeled after what you have at some of your smaller parks. The one thing that'll change on it, I believe, is the color that is shown around the band of the sign is not the color that you've used on some of your other signs. So, of course, that'll be changed. Anything that has to do with colors, like the colors that'll be used on the hardy board, on the siding of the restroom and so forth, that'll be brought to you when we're under construction, so you'll see the color palette and give approval to the actual paint color that's going to be used. Other details that'll be done during construction are the environmental signage, which it'll be proposed. We'll tweak it during construction, and then that'll be the last thing installed on the project. I do have a couple of questions I'd like to, or whether questions or things I need to bring up to you guys, though. There are some items that have been, after meeting with the Parks and Rec, with your staff, among ourselves, and I think when I brought it up to you at the 60%, there are a couple of items we need to get a little leeway from you guys, or a little guidance on how you want us to move with these particular items. One is whether or not you still want the lighting along the boardwalk. Your Parks and Rec committee was for it, your staff is for it. In certain cases, I'm for it, except for the extra cost. But it is an item that is only, that will be included in the plans. There's also lighting proposed for the restroom and the pavilion. That is shown on the plans, by the way. We know it's a dawn to dusk park, at least that's the consideration we have now, but that lighting is for security, maintenance purposes. It'll be what we like to call turtle lighting. It's a very soft lighting that is made. If it's a turtle beach, we don't have that issue on this beach, but it is that type of lighting, so that it's not some type of lighting that will be shining directly or brightly on the beach or shining directly at a condo or something like that. That's another item we won't have considered. And of course, the dune crossovers, which are a costly item. We have 3 of them proposed. And whether we want to stay with the 3 or not, the things we can do is we can keep all these items in the base bid, or we can make them alternates, which means we'll get a cost for them, but we'll have the choice as to if the cost is too high for the base bid, because we're going to probably have to go to our trustee implementation group to ask for additional money to help cover some of it. And they may not cover all of it. The other is, if you want all these items, will the city be in a position to pony up additional money to help pay for some of this? I hate to say that, but that is a reality.
Do you have an estimate what that would be?
Well, the cost right now for the plans as you've seen them is about close to between $800,000 to $1 million over the original estimated cost or budget that's left for the park facilities. Some of the facilities are mandatory that we have in there. The boardwalk, the restrooms, the pavilions, those are some that we can't take out. They've got to stay in there first. Then the other items are for consideration. I don't want to call them luxury items, but they're just additional features. I think all of them are good features. I wouldn't take them out, but that's just something to consider. Another item that's been brought up is whether or not to have skylights or just lighting in the restroom facility. That's not a big expense item. The most expensive item across the dune crossovers and then the rope lighting would be along the boardwalk. Not necessarily rope, but that type of lighting along the boardwalk would be probably your next expensive. We are and have designed that the transformer providing power at the site is sufficient for putting those lights out there. Should we not be able to do them this time, somewhere down the road, you'll have enough electrical power to put those facilities out there. We are basically at the point of going out to bid short of having all the permits. Once we have all the permits, then we'll complete these at 100% and then put them out to bid. And that's where I'd like some, approval, I guess, from the commission as to whether council, rather, as you're ready to let us go ahead and go out to bid with the plans as shown. Bidding process, probably 2 to 3 months. Construction estimated at 12 months. That hasn't changed since I talked with you last time. The construction will, though, necessarily go through the summer. I don't think it'll interrupt activities on the beach or the point, but it will unless we want to take it and put it off till next year, and I don't think any of us want to do that. We don't see anything with costs going up in the meantime. The other item that you need to let us know how you want to go is we talked about the temporary construction road bed, which will be made out of lime rock. Do you want us to leave the lime rock down? And I've told you the problems. It should only stay down for a short time before it receives a permanent coating of asphalt. Otherwise, it's going to become impregnated with a lot of sand, and you'll have other problems. Or do you want us to take the roadbed up in the meantime, or have it taken up and stockpiled, and the city may use it later? But if you think you may go ahead and proceed with the roadway soon after the park's completed or near completion, I would recommend you leave the bed down. You'll save that money, and it'll already be there. But that's for you guys to decide, but we do want to know whether you want us to have in our plans that the contractor will be responsible for removing the lime rock and stockpiling it at wherever the city wants it taken.
We can make that decision as the completion of the phase 3 is nearing, and as far as on the road.
You can, but it's the reason I'd like to have something now is because if we put it in our plans, the contractor knows the cost. If we come to him later, it's a change order.
Yeah,
So-
I understand that. I got a couple council members that I believe have some questions for you.
sure they do.
Ms. Ramswell.
I saw you look at me. So just a few questions. The first one is that I'm just curious why the dune walkovers are being presented as almost an option when I thought that was something that had been in the conceptual and discussed and was pretty much something that was a determined
yes, ma'am.
go-ahead?
You're correct on your last part of your statement. They have been presented, they've been in the project the whole time. The only thing about the crossovers, if you read the stipulation, they're not a specific item. So we kind of put them in there as I guess going outside the box and making them part of the boardwalk system, and also as a reason to protect those dunes. Just, people are going to come out of the boats and they're going to, instead of taking the boardwalk around all the time, they're going to want to go over the top of the dune. And some of them want to just go to the top of the dune for the viewpoint. That's why we had the engineers design the dune crossovers are in there to start with. But that's what I'm saying, we can keep them in there in the base bid, and that's where I want them to be. It's just that we're looking at, cost increases every day on construction. Michael didn't help us. The issue with the Chinese steel and the prices going up, all that stuff has caused prices to go up. And there's a lot of work going on, so contractors are being selected.
So my next question then has to do with, you said the transformer down at the park. So currently there's no electricity down at the point, right?
That's correct.
So my concern is putting a transformer, obviously it's going to be above ground, and of course that's the point, subject to major weather patterns. How much of a concern is it to be putting a transformer there when we know chances are high that it's going to be subject to some issues with weather?
The transformer will be at the end of the current area where you have where your parking ends now. It's not way out on the point. We've got to have a transformer because you've got power out there with the lighting and the wastewater lift station at the restroom. All those require power, so we've got to have power. So we don't have a choice. I understand your concern, but it's just got to be there. And unfortunately, transformers do have to be above ground.
Right, so at least it would be at the east or southeast
Right.
end of the point.
Right.
Now, for power along the boardwalk, would it would you have to run overhead lines? How would you get power to that?
No, you run the line. We would run the lines underground. You're already pulling power to the restroom. And that's why it's being sized as such so that, future use, if you need more, we've got, additional capability. If we don't put the boardwalk lighting in now.
Okay. And then also on the subject of lighting, and you mentioned this with the turtles, because I know there's a concern, they follow the light once the hatchlings are out, and I do know that there have been nests, at least down on the east side of the point. So I'm wondering, how do we prevent that? Because they might get confused, go back and forth across the point and never make it to the
No,
point.
that's
How
what I'm
do you
saying. We
do
will use what's considered, and it's FWC approved, turtle lighting. It does not attract the turtle towards the light so that they're confused. But right now, FWC and FWS do not consider Noriega Point as a turtle nesting beach. But we would put lights that are approved for that purpose. There are lights that the light goes straight down. It's what I call a soft light or an amber colored light, so it's not like the moon, which is bright white. This is a soft, so if you had a turtle nesting beach, this would be approved.
Excellent, I'm glad to hear that. And then I guess my last question / point would be about the road. And I believe staff had looked into that somewhat. Wasn't there a decision made that we were going to go ahead and let a temporary road down? I can't recall what the outcome was on that.
My understanding was that we were going to discuss this on Thursday at our visioning session. It's on the agenda for discussion at our visioning session coming up.
Okay, thanks.
In other words,
Thank
we'll
you for
get, we'll
presentation.
get you an answer on that road soon. So you're not, before you get to the bid process. Mr. Destin.
I might try to get him an answer on the road a little bit sooner than that. Regarding lighting for the boardwalk, I believe it's a security thing for me. If you leave it completely dark, we know that it's a dune, or it's going to be used from dawn to dusk, but we know people will wander out there. They just will. So we need to have lighting out there because I don't want anything bad happening. Light tends to help with that. With the dune crosswalk, or the dune crossovers, we have to protect the dunes. I've seen them out there. There's kids, there's families, they park on one side with their boats, they want to go over, and they're not going to walk around, they don't know, or they don't care. they go straight over. So we need to give them a pathway of least resistance to try to save the sea oats that are holding that dune together. Regarding lights in the bathroom, yeah, let's give them lights. In my opinion, skylights are fine, but there are days where it's cloudy, and it can be dark and dank. It's another security issue for me. And then with the temporary construction road, my opinion is, let's make sure that we have that road ready to go. As soon as you guys are done, we can open up the park because the public will want to use it. So I see no benefit in tearing up your lime rock if there's a way that we can quickly and somewhat cost-effectively place a permanent or semi-permanent surface on the top of the construction road. So to that end, I'll make a motion, and we'll move to instruct the DEP to include the lighting for the boardwalk, the dune crossovers, electronic lights in the bathroom, and give them the understanding that we desire that the temporary construction road be left so that we're ready to cover it with some sort of surface as soon as you guys are finished.
Okay, I got a motion.
I'll second that for discussion, but then I have a question.
We got a motion and got a second, and so we will begin discussion right now with Mr. Overdeer.
Okay, so Pierce, did I hear you say that we were $800,000 to $1 million over what we're being allotted for this project?
Yes, that's basically it. The original estimated budget, we're now at about $800 to $1 million over. Now, that's not saying we can't obtain the funding. We just have to go back to the trustee implementation group, explain the reason for the cost and why we'll need the extra funding to come out. These are out of unallocated funds. These are not coming from state coffers or whatever. These are still the BP money. These are just funds that have not been allocated to other projects under the early restoration.
Okay, so if we do all these things that we just talked about, that we're getting ready to vote on here, and then we go back to them and they don't give us that money, I mean, we're on the hook for that $800,000 to $1 million?
No, I don't think so. No. There's nothing to force you into paying more money. It's just that if you really want the items and they say, you know, we're not going to give that much money to the project, then those items would have to be dropped. You'd either have to rebid the project without those items in it, which is one way to do it, or the city could come up with some or part of the money if it wanted to.
We'll send Parker back to the TDC.
Or the trust for public.
Yeah, and I think what he's sharing with us is that the reality about the lack of funding, but at the same time, there are some other funding options available that we can be creative with. Or is that all you had? Mr. Mitchell?
What procedure, how will you go about requesting? Are you going to go about requesting the money, or does the city have to request it?
No, our Deepwater Horizon group will go back to the TIG to request the money.
Okay, so would we wait for the approval before we start bidding?
The first thing we do is we receive the bids, and we see exactly how much we need,
Right.
and with a contingency on top of that. And then we go back, they take that to the trustee implementation group, or the TIG as we like to call it, and y'all know what that's made up of. It's made up of FWC, DEP, and several federal agencies. And get them to approve. We show them where we have the extra money and talk and try to persuade them to approve it. It's usually not hard to get my personnel in DEP and FWC. It's just then up to getting the feds to approve.
Do we have any idea specifically what it is? What are the items that ran over? It's not any one thing, but is there
It's not any one thing. It's what I said. It's partially from just the cost of construction now. Estimates were made, the original estimates were made now almost probably 19 to 15 years ago. The current estimates are based on current cost. I feel comfortable with what our engineers have done. And we do have some items that may not have been taken into account first time around. That's some of the items like the crossovers and things like that.
One other question, because in the last time you briefed us, I know it was a surprise to some of us about the add-on to the bathroom. The
additional size?
The additional size of it, okay. So I guess my question is, again, we certainly want to do as much as we can, but would that thought process go that if we don't get the money, start figuring out, I know you talked about what we'd cut off, but maybe to include downsizing some of it to be able to do as much as we could. We went.
That's
we went-
always,
I'm sorry.
Councilman, that's always, I'm sorry if I interrupt you. That's always an option for any project, is to reduce scope. But then that requires additional design.
Right.
I mean, we couldn't ask our engineers to
No, of course not.
architect it. They'd have to be paid for that too. So,
Hopefully you'll get the money. I appreciate it. Thank you.
and we'll do our best.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr.
Thank you.
Braden?
Thank you. The road that y'all will be putting in, is that a lime base, rock base?
Yeah, like the sub-base would be the natural material. The base would be lime rock.
Would be lime rock? So for DOT specs, we can go right over that with asphalt?
You can go over the top of it with asphalt?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
yes, sir.
Okay.
The road is designed to have 2 inches of asphalt on top of you have to roll up the plans, but I think it's a 6-inch base, and then you have your sub-base, which are all part of the construction. Now, the city will obtain, we prepared a complete set of plans. The road, the whole finished road, that whole system, road, sidewalks, the minimal amount of stormwater design, that's already or in process of being permitted. So you won't the city will not have to go get it permitted. You also have a complete set of plans that'll be separate for the roadway portion, that you can go directly out to bid on your own, because like I said, it was already agreed that the city would build the road, but we had it designed for you. And most of that stuff, just to warn you, you can't just build some of it without doing some of the rest of it. You build the road, you gotta have the stormwater controls. You definitely want a sidewalk in there because you gotta have people have a place to walk. You don't want them walking down the middle of the road, which they're gonna do. There's also additional parking included on the road. I think about 18 spaces. The road would be able to contain 18 additional spaces of parking. And then the permanent road also has a cul-de-sac ending. Our construction road doesn't. But we'll put the lime rock in like that, but the final road is a cul-de-sac that emergency vehicles can come into and turn around and stuff like that, so.
Is there curbing is the curbing going to be put in as well?
Is there curbing on it? There's not vertical curbing. I think, you remember there is vertical curbing? Okay, I stand corrected, but yes.
Cool. Thank you.
You've always got to have some kind of curbing on a road, or otherwise you know what happens, it cracks and spalls off.
Ms. Ramswell?
Thank you. So, and this is for staff, actually, and I'm not sure which particular focus of staff, but my concern is that if we go ahead and do the road ourselves, that originally the development order that was approved with the road as a public benefit, wouldn't that then cause issues with that development order? Because one of the conditions of that DO being approved was the road as their public benefit.
Kim, you want to answer that? I don't think that falls under their jurisdiction,
I like to stay out of that.
Oh, but it's part of the motion.
Just give us a minute. It does fall under our jurisdiction.
No, not cities, I'm talking about his.
Now, we did provide you with a cost estimate, a current cost estimate for the road.
Do, 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 do. The game show. Bear with us, sir.
Well, apparently there's an application pending that I don't have in front of me and am not aware of until right now, but Lewis can respond because there is apparently an exemption application.
Yes, so they're going through a development order exemption as we speak for the project. So we'll have to see how that impacts the road issues.
All right, well,
So I guess then my question becomes, until we see some additional, sorry, they're still conferring. So I guess my question then becomes, until we see some alternate or an amendment or whatever deviation, what's in place right now requires them to provide that road.
Yes, but I think what you're talking about is temporary anyway, so we're not going to expend the funds to put in a permanent road or take away the public benefit. We're just talking about putting in a low-cost temporary road. So I don't see the problem with the DO if that's all we're doing.
Because we were talking about it additionally, then we could put the coating on and do all that. So that's at least some expenditures on our part that we weren't prepared or anticipating having to cover.
I think that's a bridge we can cross when we get there type situation.
Right.
Okay?
Well, I'm not sure I agree, but
Okay.
I made
we're-
my point, so.
Yes, ma'am. We're going to go ahead and take it to a vote so you can make your point again if you so choose. All right. Members, do we need to just for your own edification, do you want to redo hear the original motion, Ray?
Okay. This is to instruct FDEP to include lightings around the dune crossover, put electronic lights in the bathrooms, and leave the temporary road after end of construction.
Okay. And we'll go ahead and vote on that motion. Vote is unanimous, so moved.
Thank you all.
I hope that gave you all the direction you need. If not, contact Lance and we'll get back in front of these folks. All right, thank you, sir. All righty then. Item number 3, public comments on agenda items that are not public hearings and any other matters not on the agenda. Each person will get 3 minutes to make comments. And when you come up to the podium, just give your name and your address. And I do not have any blue or yellow cards, so I'm just going to look out in the audience. And if anybody would like to come to the podium, do so at this time. And I see our first victim, Miss Carrie. You know the routine, ma'am.
Excuse me. Carrie Harbarger, Spring Lane. Hey, I wanted to touch with the concrete plant property. Did everybody receive the environmental report? Okay, I'm not a chemist, but this is what I found and maybe we could touch on. And it's only because I'm not trying to be petty. I think that we can afford to clean it and we should clean it up because actually if anybody Googled or researched fly ash, they would understand how dangerous it could be. So I had taken just a couple notes and I've only got 3 minutes. So I had taken a couple of notes and CMEX had done business there and obviously they were to familiarize on record for anybody who doesn't know. Was one of the largest producers of fly ash, which brings me to they were also one of the largest producers of bottom ash, synthetic gypsum, landfill ash, and many others. But, you know, it was never mentioned. So maybe if we get back to testing, perhaps we should include any of that. There was also 2 man-made ponds presumed permitted for, which I didn't understand, stormwater treatment facility. Okay, the maps are on there. But anyway, so producing, obviously, it's used to strengthen concrete for people that don't really know. And this basically, what I saw, it was 114 pages, but I'm not a chemist, but I saw a standard report for basically buying land. The only mentions that it really had of fly ash was their loading rate of about 27 tons per hour in a silo. Might I add, I don't think they ever tested the silo areas for thoroughly inspect the areas around the silos for any visible emissions, like dust and stuff. They did mention how they used water hoses. We really need to address this probably with staff. There's a whole lot more that I didn't get. Okay. The report does state also there was never any chemical tests done to this property, and the probability for as long as the concrete and the CMEX and the fly mash was produced there is highly probable. It even says in the report. I documented where anybody could find it. So we've already covered that there were no chemical tests ever done, so it did seem like it was quite a bold assumption that they didn't feel like they, well, let me just go back, that we solicited, which I wasn't quite sure, the fellow that put this report together, He solicited a remediation engineer with experience, is what they were supposed to be looking for, with concrete plans. But in this report, she admits that she'd never done a report on a concrete plant. Her name was Debbie Hitchcock. That was at 7.5. She had never done such work, but she was the professional. Let's see what else I just made quick notes of. You know, they were looking for a professional and obviously went to the most unprofessional. Not trying to be rude. I didn't mean that like that. The last person, and also there's mentions of underground tanks that were never mentioned in this report if the tanks were ever removed. And it admittingly in this report says that if the tanks are still there, that they are contaminated. We don't even know. And then in the report, in the opinion, says he can't tell you. He could tell you if they were top-level tanks, if there was any visible contamination, but being underground, and we already know via report that there are 3 underground tanks. There was also a compliance inspection report done by one Jenny Waldrip in the report, and for some reason it's not even complete, which really doesn't help much. So there's my opinion, which isn't worth much, but I think we need to address it. And I think I want to ask this council if we could probably just address it. We're all going to live here for a long time and want to be a part of that. It's in our hood. It's in a residential. We need to get to the bottom of the tanks and the contamination, and I don't think, there's 3 phases for anybody who doesn't know. Phase 1, if it's complete, I don't think it's going to come back. It even says in here the probability of it coming back. It really needs to be addressed. And then there's a phase 2 and phase 3, and it's doable. We just need to do it. So, okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
Any questions from what I read?
I actually, thank you very much for bringing that up. I remember you bringing it up and discussing it before, and I was happy to.
Well, I knew that this would come up when we purchased it. There was another report done in 2004. And I want to say also in this report, it also mentions, when he does his little opening, it mentions the fact that it's not uncommon for the prices to be lowered on these properties, knowing that the buyer has the obligation of cleaning it up. And if for some reason it states that, and also to I'm aware that I believe that it was reduced for the fact that we were going to clean it up.
So,
because you could ask Mike Schutz about it if you wanted to, because they were tossing it around.
well, and I like your suggestion about, you know, us looking into making sure it is clean and safe. And what would be the next step in that? Would that be something that would, with an RFP, would somebody automatically do that as part of development and construction? Is that something we would do outside of that? What is the process?
And who is Scott Jenkins? Oh, I'm sorry.
I would.
Thank you,
I would like to ask our new city engineer to give me the answer to that. The process, as I understood it back then, was that we had met all the environmental. There was a phase 1, phase 2. This is just from recollection. I was not directly involved in it at that point. We had to meet that in order to purchase, or we would not have been allowed to purchase ourselves. So I would like to come back to council after talking with our city engineer to see what, if anything, he would say that we need to do, because
Sure, that makes sense.
I plan on my kids playing there too. So.
And just provide with that report, Lance, any documents associated with that?
Yeah, I'd hate for us to begin construction and, you know, they dig down and crunch into a tank or something that we didn't realize was there.
3.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. Thanks.
Anyone else like to approach the podium at this time? Public hearing portion. Seeing how there's not a mad rush, I'm going to go ahead and close this portion of the meeting. And we will move on to item number 4, which is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4A is with regards to the census outreach update. At the last meeting, Ms. Nisha Barron made a presentation regarding the upcoming U.S. Census, and we have Ms. Card has put together a presentation related to that.
Thank you, Lance. Good evening, Council. So right now, the 2020 census is in the education phase, so there's a lot of information that has been shared. Ms. Barron had sent to me that we have already been pushing on all of our social media platforms. So as I'm collecting the information, putting together marketing materials, I did ask Ms. Barron that once the 2020 census, their site is live, however, the questionnaire is not at this time. So I did ask her to relay that to me as soon as they go live, in addition to getting the Spanish-speaking and English phone numbers that we can provide in the marketing. We did secure key partnerships with the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office, the Okaloosa County Tax Collector's Office, Destin Water Users, and the Destin Chamber. The tax collector's office is working with Ms. Barron, and they have even offered to probably put the information on their monitor, so as we have citizens that are sitting there waiting, they'll be able to see the information. I spoke with Lockwood Warnett, and he said that they're looking at leading up to April that they can provide that information on their billing. I know Mr. Wood has been very proactive. He's reached out to some of our public and private organizations, as well as our faith-based community, so we're building a data sheet. Once we have that in place and we have the marketing material set ready to go, we will be sharing that with them as well as all of our strategic partners. And as we have patrons calling into all of our city facilities, we do have a 15-second PSA that our employees will be able to talk to our patrons and letting them know, just to remind them, hey, the 2020 census is happening.
Thank you, Ms. Card. Lance?
Next up is item 4B, Highway 98 Irrigation System Update. At the last meeting, we had a request from 2 council members regarding the irrigation on Highway 98 and also the irrigation on Mountain Drive. We've since got with staff and the contractors to get the most accurate information out there. And my understanding is on Highway 98 between Airport Road and the Marler Bridge, there are currently 2 pumps that are operational, but they're not on because of the Triple R project. The rest of the pumps have been, they're not functioning at this time. With regard to Mountain Drive, the pump system is working, but there is damage to the system itself as far as the zoning working. So right now there's only a couple zones that are working. We could do a Band-Aid fix, and this was Councilman Dustin asked about this. We could do a Band-Aid fix for somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000. The real fix is to replace that system. It's a 2-wire system that they don't use anymore. And the problem is, once a wire breaks on a 2-wire system, if they didn't put a tracer wire in, you can't find the break. So it would involve a complete redo if we wanted to really make it work well. We also have Mr. Burgess here to answer any other question.
What's the price tag on a complete redo? Do you have any ideas?
We've reached out to our irrigation contractor, Gulf Coast Environmental, and they're putting a quote together for us.
All right, thank you. Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you. Thanks for getting this inventory. That's really helpful, and I'm excited about getting them all fixed and going again. But my next question is there a process that's been established or is going to be established that would catch things as part of a normal work schedule? I mean, it shouldn't have gotten to this point where almost everything we have out there is broken or crushed or inoperable. So I'm just wondering what is in place so that as part of somebody's, normal duties would check, like they're mowing the right-of-way, as part of mowing the right-of-way, we check the sprinklers in that section, or whatever. Is there something like that?
There is. As part of the contract for the median right-of-way, is that contractor performs monthly inspections of those systems. And within the most recent version of that contract, we included that those inspectors are supposed to be accompanied by a staff member to verify what is being written down. The condition currently is mostly because we knew that the Triple R project was coming and the potential of them being destroyed was very real.
So my first comment was going to be, please don't tell me that all these broke in the last month and they checked them last month and they were all operable, because clearly we probably haven't checked them in a while because of the 3R project.
Yeah, 3R project started in March. So
right. So is there I guess during the normal course of duty then, that would be something that would be checked, just like along Main Street or Beach or something, because I know we had an issue with most of them being out along Main Street at one point. I had talked to Mr. Sandstead, I don't know, a couple years ago, and he's like, look, they're all... So I just want to make sure that somehow whoever is responsible for it is being held responsible, and they're actually bringing a staff member along to fact check them, so to speak.
And the unique situation that we're in right now is once the R project started, the DOT contractor took over control of the medians and the maintenance of the medians. So right now, we don't actually have maintenance control of the medians. Once they've wrapped up the project, we'll get it back and we can start those inspections again. And we need to be making sure, of course, in the other areas of town where the same contractor is being used, that we're doing those monthly inspections and that a staff person is indeed accompanying that contractor.
Great. And do we have an ongoing contract with these folks, and when was the last time we reviewed their contract?
We do have an ongoing contract with this group out of Pensacola, and we recently renewed it for another year. They've been fairly good to work with, much better than the contractor before them, but they're not perfect, and they need follow-up too. So, and hopefully we'll get our staff on board to follow up.
Awesome, thank you.
Mr. Braden?
Thank you. I'd ask a while back for the plans for that $1.4 million that they're doing. Did we get a copy of those?
Okay, I've reached out to Rodney Chamberlain with FDOT District 3, as well as Brad Brenner. He's the area engineer for Volkert on the 3R project. The last report I received is there were no finalized landscaping plans, and I reached out to him again to see if there's an update to that. And haven't heard back from him yet.
So we got an estimate of $1.4 million, but we don't know what that was based on?
That's correct, sir. Yeah, the $1.16 billion was, I mentioned, I spoke to Jim Wood a couple weeks ago concerning that, and FDOT has identified a project for landscaping improvements from Marler Bridge to Airport Road in that amount. But we do not have the city has not been given even a draft set of plans, and the question I asked Rodney and Brad is, at what point in that process will our elected officials have the ability to see those and comment on them?
Okay, I guess my concern is we don't know what we're getting, but in the meantime, we're just going to let everything in the medians die. Even the large crepe myrtles and every bush in the medians, just let it die, not even knowing what the hell we're getting later down the road. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me.
We can reach out to them again. They have not put the plan together yet, is my understanding. And we definitely want input into the plan. I personally walked that stretch yesterday. I can tell you, I mean, the crepes are doing fine right now, but I don't know how much longer they'll do fine without water. But I mean, I walked the entire stretch from the bridge to Beach Drive, and the medians that still exist are the trees are doing okay, the bushes are doing okay, the grass is not doing so good. So,
right, but I guess my concern is the plans we all saw. There were maybe 4 different places they were changing the medians, the cuts in the medians, and it's not affecting probably 75% of our medians. So I don't know why we've cut all our wells off and just not watering anything, just letting everything die. To me, it just doesn't make any sense.
I don't disagree, and I think Mr. Burgess intends on getting in contact with the contractor that's supposed to be taking care of that right now, not our contractor, but the project contractor, and seeing what can be done to get those things operational again.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question building on Mr. Braden's comment. And this may sound ridiculous, and I see Ms. Hebert is here, and I think she's on this committee, but is it ridiculous to suggest that some of those more expensive or older things be relocated somewhere else so they don't die? I mean, I know maybe it's not even, it's easier, but I hate to just see stuff die if there's something we can do. I sound like a real tree hugger, but I mean, we spent the money, we put them there, they're beautiful, and I hate to just see them flounder.
It's possible to do that, very difficult in the medians because of what's underneath the medians, to get it, and I've never seen a tree spade try to operate in a median because of what's underneath it. They may bring up a lot more than roots, but we can look into it and see.
Is the cost of any damage to these plants or trees, isn't that assumed by FDOT?
Yes, they're supposed to replace.
So, I mean, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I just hate to see them just sit there and die, but yeah, I mean, I understand if there's nothing we can do.
I have a question for staff that hopefully you can answer. I understand the plans aren't designed yet, but the 1.4, is that just a number they came up with and said, we got 1.4 million that we're going to spend? How do we get that number if they have no plans?
The TPO, my understanding is the TPO program that number into their future budget. Mr. Burgess, do you have any additional information? Those were the numbers I was given.
Right, the FDOT's created a project for that landscaping rehabilitation in that amount. And I was forwarded an email to that effect by Mr. Wood maybe about 2 weeks ago.
All right. Press on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4C is the Development Review System Software Update. Normally, we've been doing this under consent, but last week was a big week for this project, a milestone, actually, for this project. It was the kickoff of getting ready to begin the transition to the new eGov system. We had the trainers and the project managers for eGov come in and introduce it and sit down and spend 3 solid days with our key staff working through painful processes, trying to make sure that this software is going to do what we want it to do. And we have Mr. Warren and Mr. Zanguzzi and Matt, my personal thanks for organizing this thing last week. Well done. But they're here to give a further update on it.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. This is very exciting times for the city of Destin. We did kick off our InterGov project last week. We had representatives from the Community Development Department, City Manager's Office, IT, Finance, Public Services, and the Clerk's Department, and Code Compliance, all there. For 3 straight days, we worked very tightly with our project manager from InterGov, and I'm pleased to say that the outcome of this was very positive. We stayed ahead of schedule the entire time, and in our conversations with our project manager and implementation manager, they both said that our folks performed very well and was one of the most prepared groups that they have ever encountered. So that was all very positive news. And in addition, hats off to our department directors, Mr. Zanguzzi, Mr. Burgess, and Joey, and everybody else who contributed to this, because their folks came in, they're excited, they're ready to do this, and we're making good progress. With that said, this is going to be a long year. It's going to be a full year of implementation on this, and we're going to face a lot of hurdles, but so far we've started well. And last of all, I want to do a special thanks to Matt here, our IT manager, who has been keeping this together, and he's been doing a fantastic job on this and has been a great new addition to our team and is doing a good job. So we're excited about this project, and we'll be bringing further updates as they come along. And we're here to answer any questions you might have on the project. And again, many thanks to y'all and our staff for the hard work they're putting in.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. Where were we done with all the scanning stuff yet?
So we have put off site a number of our scanning documents. I don't know what percentage. Maybe Matt can help me answer that. They did 1 full truckload, and they're coming back late this week to get another truckload. So those are being moved off site. This is a difficult process because we have active files that we have to make sure that we're able to put our hands on. So it's been a lot of coordination with Mr. Zanguzzi's staff and IT, but so far we're in good hands and it's moving right along.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Any further questions for Webb concerning the update? Seeing none, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4D is a paid parking update. Council last year about this time asked us to bring back the results of the 100 Days of Summer for 2019. We have some of those results for you, and a recommendation. My personal recommendation is, instead of going to the gated system that we talked about last year at this time, the system is working. And the staff time required to operate it has gone down significantly. The revenues are going in the correct direction, and I believe the right move for us is to maintain a similar system. Well, definitely keep the system in place for the existing parking lots, and then operate under a similar system for the future parking lots if council decides that we should charge for those also. We have Mr. Warren. This is going to make the presentation for you.
You flip it to the next slide.
Can you start the slideshow, Catherine?
All right, this is the first slide. It'll kind of show you the transaction count of this is actually the number of cars that actually used the system by year, going back to 17, 18, and 19. And you notice that the community center almost doubled in the last year from the first year as we brought that full lot on board and went to that flat $5 fee. That seems to have worked quite well. I think you'll find the Marlowe Street did drop a little bit, but I think as the crowding in the harbor area and whatnot continues, that'll get its increased usage. The next slide. This is just a base number this is the net revenue that we received. In 2018, we received about $41,000. Last year, with the change in the fee structure, we got about $70,000. So that was a significant improvement just based on having that flat fee and not having to calculate, $1 for the first minute and 25 cents for the next minute and whatnot. So this, I think the people that use the lots appreciated that a lot better than trying to calculate what they're going to get charged over a period of time. As you know, we did go out to an RFP this summer, and we got 4 proposals back. 2 of them were for the base lot entrance rails, and the other 2 proposals were from companies that actually wanted to put the equipment in and manage the lots, which is probably more appropriate for like a big parking garage as opposed to a surface lot like we had. Of the 2 proposals for the entrance-exit ramps, the cheapest price was about $130,000. And then the other company actually had 3 different type of systems. As you can see, they range in price from about $214,000 to almost $500,000 plus a part of that transaction. Of the 2 proposals that wanted to operate the lots, they were basically going to put the equipment in and then do a 50-50 revenue sharing. And I believe in both cases they would want to readdress what our current fees are, because I don't think they would support that type of system.
So why create short-term paid parking in our beach areas? Number one, we want to maximize the availability for our beachgoers to have parking spaces to access our waterways and beach parks. What we're currently seeing is we have long-term parking overflow from potentially residential rentals, contractors, and others that are consuming our beach parking spaces. So what we would like to do is ensure that those are freed up so the people who are going to the beach are able to actually park and go. And then also we'll create a dedicated revenue stream for parking improvements in these areas. So the proposed areas, there are 3 areas in the Crystal Beach area as well as an additional one in the Gulf Shore Drive area that you can see on the map. I'll start from east and work my way west. East, over by Terracotta Drive, there's approximately 13 spaces that are across Scenic Highway 98. There are approximately 30 to 35 spaces in the central part, which is over by Pompano Street, Copia Street, and Barracuda. And there's an additional 2 dozen parking spaces over by Hutchinson. In addition, we have approximately 75-ish along Gulf Shore Drive. This does include our current parking lot for Noriega Point. I remind you that those areas along the road there would be shoulder parking, it'd be improved parking there that we currently have some drainage issues on and whatnot that will be improved in an upcoming pavement project that was approved a while back. Here's the total number of paid parking spaces that it would increase to our total inventory. It'd be about 135. Here's some peer cities, their beach parking prices. As you can tell, South Florida, they do have a little bit higher rates. We do have our peers in Gulf Shores, Alabama, as well as Panama City Beach, which generally do block hours, meaning about $5 for a block of 4 hours or even 24 hours. However, we want to make our strategy, our proposed strategy, is to keep it to a block of shorter hours so that we encourage short-term parking, not long-term parking. So we brought a couple of actions. Our staff's recommendation is to continue using the paid parking gap in all current lots and convert our parking spaces in Crystal Beach and Gulf Shore Drive to paid parking at approximately $5 for $5 for 5 hours. The additional costs would be minimal. There will be some additional signage and striping. The time frame would be before March 1st. And as you can tell, the net revenue would potentially increase up to $150,000. Last of all, resident passes were mentioned. We do want to get some direction from council on this, if we would like to pursue this option. And if council would like us to pursue a residential pass program, we could bring something definitive back in the December timeframe. And that's it.
Thanks, sir. Well done. I'll put in my 2 cents worth. I kind of initiated some of this discussion, even though the staff had already been looking at it prior to me bringing it up. Just driving along Crystal Beach after dropping my wife off at work, I noticed, especially in the summertime, you'd see this, 3-4 days in a row, you see the same car sitting in the same parking spot. So that's the idea of encouraging short-term beach access parking needs to be one of the keynote factors as we move forward. First up is Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. If this does pass and we decide to go down this route, I would like to see us implement the resident passes, but not resident passes in the Harbor District. And the reason why, and I made this abundantly clear over the past several years, is that my support for paid parking in the Harbor District is that the city permitted these gigantic restaurants and businesses with, like Harry T's was permitted with 8 parking spots. Well, and so what you had was in these these city lots, they really turned into employee lots. So we were subsidizing businesses that did not properly plan. And I do not think the city should be in the business of subsidizing irresponsible businesses. 95% of all the businesses in Destin park their employees on their property. These businesses should do the same. This isn't the case on Holiday Isle and Crystal Beach, and so I would not support implementing paid parking there. The solution to having short-term rentals and this overflow parking that takes up these spots days at a time would be a time limit, a 6-hour maximum time limit, and have code enforcement enforce that the same way that cities do when they have a 2-hour parking limit. And that would prevent us from having to charge. As a revenue stream, sure, it would generate money to provide more parking or beach access to the general public, but I think at large, the city of Destin has completely failed our general public and our visitors in providing beach access over the past 30 years. And it's exemplified by our tourist frustrations and our locals' frustrations about how do we go to the beach if we want to go to the beach. Well, they're private beach. There's private beaches. Henderson Park fills up by noon every day in the summer, and that leaves us with really nowhere to go to the beach except some 60-foot wide, essentially right-of-ways in Crystal Beach. And so the paid parking in Crystal Beach is not subsidizing irresponsible business owners. I think it's further penalizing the general public that has been let down by this community and its poor planning over the past 30 years. I'm not blaming this current council or this current city staff, because Parker and I were 12 years old when most of this stuff was going on. Not to pass the buck, but anyway, so I would not support this, but I would support time limits on the parking spots we do have that we're considering changing to paid. And if y'all do pass it, I would encourage us to utilize resident passes.
Mr. Braden.
Thank you. The parking down in Crystal Beach is parking, subsidized parking for business owners. And I'll tell you how I know. And it's for short-term rentals. And I'll tell you how I know, because my own daughter was staying in a 2-story home down in Crystal Beach on 098, and she was telling me about how she was shuttling people back and forth through vehicles. I said, wait, what do you mean shuttling people back and forth? Where was you shuttling people to? Well, they'd filled up those parking places, and she was shuttling them back and forth to the parking lot and Best Buy parking lot to get their vehicles and bring them back and forth. Well, so I don't know where you were staying. I don't know where she was staying. I know she was staying on 098 in one of those big 2 or 3 story homes. But anyway, so I know firsthand that
But you're talking about them parking in the Best Buy parking lot.
But her and her friends had parked
at the beach access.
At the beach access. They'd filled all that up, so she was shuttling more people up to Best Buy parking lot. And it's some of the same people that the mayor was talking about, that's been there for day in, day out. It's short-term rentals that are parking there.
I've had them park at my business, short-term rentals, and the short-term rental company shuttles them to that. And we've addressed that problem with strengthening our parking codes, but unfortunately it was 20 years too late.
Yeah,
but
agreed.
I hear your point.
Agreed. That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Braid. Mr. Marler.
I'll have some questions on short-term rentals when we get to the code compliance review. But in reference to Mr. Morgan's comments, when the boardwalk was done in 2008 and the various easements were done, a lot of those easements, the city said they would also enhance and provide extra parking for the businesses there who got on board. I'm not going to debate about.
It's non-binding.
Well, although it was non-binding, this council in particular, we've turned down the opportunity to look at building a parking garage on property that we already own that I still think we need to do. But the parking is not just the issue of the developments and the restaurants out there. It's the issue of the city. When we permitted these things, we were going by the codes at that time, and I agree that they're not perfect and everything according to how many seats a restaurant has to how many parking spaces are supposed to be there. I think part of that had to do with the number of people in a car. So I know that sounds weird and strange in that sense, but that's the way they did it. I think that what we need to do is eventually we need to work on working together with the current harbor businesses out there and see if we can come up with an adequate solution. I know that's out there somewhere, and I think we can find it, whether it's parking garages or something else, but I don't think it's just the responsibility of the business owners. I think it's the responsibility of the city to ramp it up as much as as we say for the business owners. And I mean, that goes for all the businesses on the harbor, not one in particular or anything like that, because I mean, one of the reasons that we built the boardwalk was people were leaving the harbor and we wanted people to come back. And as I've said it before, the harbor used to be a place to see, now it's a place to be. Everybody wants to be on the harbor. at all the various facilities we have out there. So it's not going to get, it's going to get more, not less. So I think we the city needs to ramp it up as much as we work on getting the businesses to do it also.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mitchell.
I know we haven't gotten to the recommended motion, but when you look at the recommended motion, there's also a portion in there that says no parking from dusk to dawn. I think we need to revisit that, think about that, because first of all, it's ridiculous to create a rule that we can't enforce.
Yeah.
We're not going to have, we don't have code compliance out there. We don't have code compliance out there from dusk to dawn. I just think we ought to rethink that out, because there's no reason to put a law that everybody's going to laugh about. We don't have any way to enforce it.
The dusk to dawn, so you're saying we should not have that?
Well, we got the recommended motion. I realize we haven't gotten to that, but the recommended motion says there'll be no parking from dusk to dawn. That's part of the recommended motion. We're going to make it a no parking zone.
Yeah.
We have no way of enforcing that. So why create a law that we know is not going to be enforced?
Or you could have a code enforcement officer drive by at 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. for 10 minutes, and if there's any cars.
And that's just for the Crystal Beach parking, correct?
Well, again, if we have the code compliance staff to do it, when we get to that point, that's fine. But to create a law that we can't enforce is just something to consider.
Let's see, sorry. Ms. Ramswell.
So I remember a few years ago when we started bouncing around these ideas, and we talked, I believe, up here about Crystal Beach and Restaurant Row. And I believe Restaurant Row was incorporated, and I see a note on here that it's not incorporated into this study, and I'm just wondering what those numbers are and why it wasn't included.
Yes, ma'am. We have been looking at that area. We need some clarification on many of those spots. And we would like to bring that back at a separate time, because we need some clarification on some of those public spots before we go down that road.
I think I know where you're talking about. I would support going ahead and doing these in Crystal Beach and Restaurant Row when that time becomes, when you bring that back. I would also, in line with what Mr. Morgan said, approve of and highly recommend that we do some sort of resident pass. Like I said, I feel like we've talked about Crystal Beach before in the past, and the fact that I remember even citizens coming forward and saying, why are you not doing it in Crystal Beach? Everywhere else we go, people are charging for parking. Why are we not doing it everywhere, at least along in those diagonal spaces and such? So that's my opinion.
Mr. Braden, and I'll go last.
Thank you. You gave us the parking net revenue. What was the gross?
It's about 15% more than that. It's about what we pay about as the number of cars get charged, the percentage goes down. But overall, it's between 10 and 15% of our gross revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Mayor, I'm sorry. I forgot one thing. In the listing of the different options that you provided, one thing that is my personal opinion is I don't think those arms coming down are going to last. I can see us replacing those suckers on a weekly basis at great expense. So I would recommend something other than that.
The recommended motion is not to put the arms in, is to continue with the paid-for parking app. And if at some point in the future this council or another council chooses to put those in, we'll ensure that they're of a type that can't be just knocked over. They'll have cameras and whatnot to be able to protect the...
Oh, but then it becomes a game. Whose car can yeah, okay. No, but thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ramswell. I'm just going to add my 2 cents into it. There's been some interesting discussions. We have a beach public park initiative ongoing, and we're hopefully to provide access, which will create even a larger need for some of this parking. As a city with no police department, waste management, power company, we're always starving for revenue outside of ad valorem taxes, which this council's repeatedly said they're not going to do anytime soon. And so to try to deal with the needs, the parking needs, paid parking is the only logical avenue to go down. Everywhere else in Florida and even in Alabama, especially when it comes to beach access, they don't have free public parking. It's, you pay to park, and the recommendation to do it on a time basis prevents the abuse of people from making it their permanent parking spot for 24 hours a day. So I think that's also the route that we should take. And even if we do a citizen residence parking pass, even then it's still going to require a block time limit, because there's probably people that own homes in Crystal Beach that might be they may want to take advantage of a good situation because they get a free parking spot, and they might want to abuse that. So anything along that beach needs to have some type of time block. I think we've discussed about building multi-level garages, buying more beach access. If we get that beach access, we're going to, pavilions will be on them, we'll have maintenance costs. I think the paid parking, especially along our beach access, is all part of ensuring that we have the funds available to maintain not only the parking spots themselves, but the facilities close to them that we own and provide for the citizens. I don't think it's unfair or something that we ought to turn our backs to. If I had a vote, I would support all these recommendations. At this point, before I go, I'll let, Mr. Morgan wants to say something, but first, our city manager.
I just wanted to throw in there, if the council decides to proceed with charging for parking down in the Crystal Beach area, that we could include the spots at Crystal Beach Park, and there's a couple of the beach access points that have a couple of spots too. Those are front row parking, and they should definitely be included. I just didn't see them on the map, and I wanted to make sure everyone, if we go this route, that they're included in this, because that is front row parking. That they should definitely be included if we go this route.
Okay. At this point, after Mr. Morgan speaks, I would like to entertain a motion in a second we can bring this to a vote and begin the process to work through this paid parking scenario.
Yeah,
Mr. Morgan.
And I'll be brief, and I might be the only one in opposition to this, but I just think our beach situation is so terrible, and people are so fed up with it, tourists and residents alike, that this is adding insult to injury. And I think it's rude to the public, even if it makes sense. And I know this is a common sense solution to some of our parking solutions in terms of how to raise revenue. I just think the optics of it are bad, and I think it's salt in the wound that, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion. I move that the council direct the city manager to continue with the current paid parking app system in city parking lots and add the parking in Crystal Beach and Gulf Shore Drive as short-term parking with the rate of $5 per 5 hours and no parking from dusk to dawn. And then I would also add that we provide passes to our residents.
So I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion on this matter? I think go ahead, sir.
I have to agree with Mr. Mitchell. I think we should take the dusk to dawn out if Ms. Bramswell would amend her motion, because I don't think we're going to be able to enforce that.
Can I respond to that, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, sir.
It is currently on the agenda for Thursday to discuss extending our hours for our code enforcement as something that they could take on. Additionally to that, the city has always, since before I came on board, had a no parking overnight policy at our parks, and most of these parking spots involve parks. The sheriff's office wants us to keep that. It's a good thing if they see cars in there, usually after dark, but nothing good happens at parks, so that gives them a reason to ask those gentlemen or ladies to leave the park at that point. So that is one reason I would suggest leaving that part in.
Well, we've recently had a couple of inquiries at Joe's Bayou Park. That's one of the reasons about overnight parking where they're out on their boats floundering and stuff like that.
But that's not the case here.
Well, if we're saying all the city parks, that includes Joe's Bayou too.
Well, she made the motion, so we're going to stick with it unless she wants to amend it. Ms. Ramswell, are you good with your motion as is?
Yeah, we'll stick with it. We can always change it after visioning it next reading or whatever.
All right. Any further discussion? Let's go ahead and take it to a vote. The vote is 4-3. Ayes win. Motion carries. Airport Road update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4E is an airport road update. Mr. Burgess is prepared to discuss this item. I can tell you that we received an email from the District 3 Secretary from DOT asking us to provide a letter and to provide a resolution to them for them to proceed as the manager of this project, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Burgess for the details.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. The District Secretary requested 2 items for the council to address, hopefully this evening. The first would be a letter signed by the mayor requesting termination of the local area program agreement, and that would be where the city would deliver that project. And that has been provided in the package. In addition, they were requesting a resolution, kind of an endorsement of the FDOT's delivery of the project, and again, that has also been provided.
I'll entertain a motion at this point before we talk about it.
I'll make that motion. I move to approve Resolution 19-28, authorize the mayor to sign the letter requesting the termination of the current design local agency program agreement.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. First up, Mr. Mitchell.
This program, this project has been, we have 2 members of Public Works, Public Safety here tonight. This project has been discussed for probably 6 years. At least 6 years we've been talking about doing this. I can't tell you in the ranking of public safety where it stands on Airport Road, but it certainly is high as far as wrecks, injuries, and the like. I stood here a year and a half or 2 years ago as the chair of Public Works, Public Safety, and made the pitch to get temporary guardrails, and it was unanimously approved. After I made that pitch, I was told by the staff at the time we couldn't do that because we'd compromised the grant. I went to FDOT and asked them that, and we got it back in writing saying it would not compromise the grant, that yes, we could in fact go forward with the guardrails. We turn around on August the 14th and throw in the towel and say, gee, FDOT, we can't do it. We sent them a letter saying we can't do it. We don't know how to do it. Quote, we're having difficulty basically taking care of this program. For the last month, for the last 2 meetings, I've brought up, and the mayor and the city manager both have said how they met with the director of FDOT, Mr. Perdue, and how he agreed to take on this project. But at no time during that discussion did they say they agreed to do it with certain parameters. The design, the Public Works and Public Safety Committee worked tirelessly on the LAP program. We worked on it. Joe Bodie's back there. He brought it up to us. We discussed it. Why in the world are we going to throw in the towel and, okay, now we have to completely do away with the LAP program, number one. The letter they sent us, number one, regarding the subject, they don't even have the subject right. This is not just airport road signage and pavement markings. They don't even have the title of the subject correct that they sent to us. Moreover, it states that, number one, it's not on their agenda and it's not budgeted, so we have no idea when this is going to go forward. Okay? Even though they're saying they may approve it, it may be 5 more years before it's funded. This is ridiculous. So I wasn't going to make a substitute. Well, let me ask you this question. This council, most of it, not minus me, already voted to put in the guardrails. That was a motion that was approved. Do we need another motion to do that? That was already approved motion that staff didn't finish up on. So can we go ahead and do that, or do we need another motion to do it?
Why did staff not do it the first time?
Because we were told at the time, allegedly, that the project was going to start fairly soon. We have absolutely no idea when this program is going to start. We have no idea when it's budgeted, and this has gone on for too long. This is ridiculous.
I'm not sure the exact history of the previous motion, so I'm not sure exactly how to respond, Councilmember Mitchell. Can you take me through it again?
I stood up here, I was the chairman of the Public Works Public Safety Committee. We unanimously made a vote to suggest to the council that we put in temporary guardrails. At the time, Councilman Dixon that was sitting here was championing that up here for the council. I made the suggestion, Tuffy made the motion to go ahead and have staff install temporary guardrails along Airport Road to try to take care of some of the safety concerns. Staff then came back and said, we can't do it because we're in jeopardy of compromising the grant. FDOT then came back to us in writing and said that's not the case. You can, in fact, put in the temporary guardrail.
Do you have that letter, or was that in a packet?
That was an email sent to the city.
Yeah, but do
Oh,
you
yes,
have-
absolutely.
Could you get it to?
Oh, even whether we have that or not, I'll make another motion. But either way, I certainly can supply it, or Ray can look it up. It was an email that came to the city. Okay? But yes, I can certainly provide that. But at the end of the day, we have no idea when this project is going to be financed. They say it themselves. They can't even identify the right type of project. It's not just a pavement and airport signage and pavement markings. It's a lot more than pavement markings. So they can't even get that right. So I'd like to make a motion until we get this worked with FDOT that we go ahead and install the temporary guardrails. And I also have something else to ask about the lap. Why do we have to give up the lap?
Well, you made a motion, so let's go there
okay.
first, okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll withdraw my second, and I'll second Steve's.
Okay. So he made a motion, we have a second. Let's have discussion. Anyone have anything? Mr. Braden?
The motion that was made several years ago was to install guardrails in the middle, the median, and on the north shoulder. So if we can go back, I mean, we didn't specify in tonight's motion, we just said guardrails, but it was the middle, we were putting two in the middle to keep them crossing the median, hitting each other head on, and in the north curve to keep people out of that airport.
And I'll amend my motion to note that.
Is there a cost associated with these guardrails?
Yes.
Joe? Has anybody done a cost analysis for guardrails on Airport Road?
At the time, the information they gave us included the price of the guardrails. FDOT gave us that if they did the work for us, and at the time, we could match the price back then. This is several years ago.
Well, I mean, we're making a motion, having a discussion about putting guardrails on Airport Road. I'd sure think that we ought to figure out what it's going to cost us, unless cost isn't an issue.
Do you want us to bring back a cost estimate? I'm happy to do that, or try to find the one that was provided.
Yeah, I mean, we got a motion on the floor, so that would be, if it passes, I guess we can.
At the time, again, it's a motion here with discussion. At the time, we also brought up several suggestions. Number one, for staff to reach out to the county and see if they would partner with us, because there are so many damages to county property, specifically the airport and whatnot, and or the insurance provider, okay, because they're paying out a lot of money, and we never got any information from the staff.
Ms. Ramswell?
So I remember because I think at one point I had appointed you to that committee or something, and years ago, we had been talking about this, and every time I drive down Airport Road in the rain, there's been an accident. And that's not even to talk about the times that it's not raining or it's not cloudy and there's an accident. I mean, it's the sheriff's office, I'm sure, can tell you the frequency, but it's far more than we want to admit, and there are serious, as in injurious and fatal accidents that occur on that curve. And I think over these years, we have made it clear we wanted something done to improve the situation. We voted to have that done, and it's just the idea of having to start completely over now really, really, really bothers me. The intention was to get something done quickly to provide safety for everyone that drives on Airport Road. And honestly, at this point, I don't care what it costs to get up the guardrails, because we need to do something, and I'm not willing to wait another year, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get something done. So I'm behind your proposal 100%.
Mr. Morgan?
This was a project that we screwed up the RFQ on, right?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, so does anybody on staff have an idea of FDOT's taking over this project? Do we have an idea of when it's going to be done?
It's budgeted in the current fiscal year. Since they were unaware that they were going to be managing this project until the mayor and I made a trip over there, it obviously, once they agreed to do it, it went to the back of the line. So it could be this year, or it might not be. I just don't know the answer.
And why is FDOT requesting to take this project over for us?
We had 3 swings at it, and we missed 3 times.
So
that's being polite.
Yeah. So I'm all for the guardrails. So Steve, is your motion a substitute motion?
It is.
Okay. So I hope we pass this, and then I would like to pass the recommended motion to go ahead and turn it over to FDOT. There's no sense in fighting with them. They hold the purse strings. So this is what they've asked us to do, and I would think as a council it would be prudent of us to do it so we can get those improvements made also. So let's get the guardrails in. When FDOT moves on this project, they'll move on this project and get it done, but there's no sense in antagonizing them.
Yeah, I think that way we can appease everybody's concerns. We can get some guardrails up to address the immediate concerns, because with FDOT taking over the project that we were promised, the cost is 0. FDOT's going to foot the bill. And it's it's a $150,000, $200,000 project. It may be mislabeled, Steve, but we were talking about abrasive coatings on that turn when we were talking to the project manager and commissioner, or I guess Secretary Gaynor, and he personally assured the city manager, myself, that they would take over the project and they would finish it and they would complete it. So maybe, Lance, we can send a letter back to the FDOT and get the right verbiage so we know what we're agreeing to in the letters to satisfy the concerns of Mr. Menschel and other members of this council, and so we can knock out 2 birds with 1 stone. I think you're on pace, Mr. Morgan. So we got a motion, we got a second, and I've got one more council member that wants to weigh in, and then we're going to go ahead and take this to a vote. Go ahead, Kyron.
Okay, bumper cars. We put guardrails up, you're going to have more problems than you're solving. If anybody watches enough YouTube videos or watches any kind of videos, when you hit a guardrail, the car goes all over the place, and there's usually a fatality. It is not the guardrails that are going to help the problem. It is not. There is nothing wrong with Airport Road as far as the way the curve is, as far as the engineering goes. It has to do with the education of the driver and the fact that every time they've had an accident, it always has to do with speed. I saw one the other day. Cadillac made a 360 degree. I think it was a Cadillac. It was either Cadillac or a Ford Lincoln Continental. But either way, The problem is not the guardrails. I think when you put I'm not going to support the guardrails simply because the guardrails are going to cause more of a hazard, and I guarantee you there's going to be worse accidents and fatalities if you install the guardrails. I don't care if they're temporary, guardrails do not move.
Thank you, sir. At this time, we've had discussion. Let's go ahead and take this motion to a vote. Ayes have it, so moved. And before we go on, City Manager, if you don't mind, I think this might be an appropriate time to take a 5-minute break. Oh, no, hold on, we got.
Yeah, I got are we going
Go ahead,
to
Chatham.
follow up on that?
Yeah, thanks.
I'm sorry.
That's
I thought we were done.
Yeah, let me pull it up. I got it. Yeah,
Skip had it.
We need a new motion
I
since
move to approve Resolution 19-28 and authorize the mayor to sign the letter requesting the termination of the current design local agency program agreement.
Second.
Motion second. We've had discussion on this.
I want to discuss it because this letter is essentially saying we want to scrap everything that's been done before and start brand new. Is that correct?
No, not really.
This is us saying that the LAP grant money that will actually fund this from the federal government will go to the state instead of to us.
But doesn't the letter also specify that essentially any plans and anything that had been done before are kind of out the window and they're going to just start it from scratch?
They'll start from where we're at, and that basically is scratch. So I mean, we're
Okay.
not losing anything on this.
Okay, I guess I just wanted to clarify, but of course, that's going to be another waiting period, but if we take this emergency step, then, okay.
They'll fix the road, they promise. Or they'll try to fix the road. Can't fix stupid. That's part of the reason a lot of the accidents happen.
My point,
A 35-mile-an-hour curve at 65 or 50 doesn't usually work very well for most people.
Do we need to look at time frame for guardrail?
We can
As
look
in
at that.
yesterday?
I'm gonna need to speak with our new city engineer because there's gonna be some engineering involved in that too, and that's not my expertise area. But I can ask for.
I know plans were drawn up in '09 by former Mayor Craig Barker. They discussed it and had plans even then.
A good place to start looking then. All right, thank you. So we got a motion? Let's go ahead and vote it. Ayes have it, so moved. At this time, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Turn to their seats and we'll get the meeting back in order. Get all our staff members and everybody going. We still got quite a few things on our agenda, so we'll try to get through them in a timely manner. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting back to order. So, Lance, I guess Little League batting cage. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4F is an update on the Little League batting cages, and we have Miss Lisa Firth here to provide that update.
Yes. City engineer is working with the Little League and to come up with a good, suitable plan for the new batting cage at Threadgill Park. And that's about all I can tell you right now.
Got a timeline? Just try to have it ready by April?
It would, March would be really nice when they have their opening day.
That's good. Any questions? Nope. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Item 4G is an update on the FFA drones coordination, and we have Miss Catherine Card again.
Thank you, City Manager. We've been in contact with Richard Henry, who is the program manager for FAA, the safety team out of Alabama and Northwest Florida Flight Standards District Office. He's been sharing a lot of good information. He has made contact with the UAS program office to help participate, as they do want to support our efforts to do some sort of a education town hall to the public as it relates to drones. He feels with the program office, their participation, they are the subject matter experts on the airspace waivers, as well as they can provide us an overview of other municipal UAS programs that have been implemented throughout the nation. And also, these folks from the FAA can work with our code officers as well as our local law enforcement as it relates to citing and reporting, and obviously be able to answer any questions that our elected officials may have. So I did get the last transmission from him on Friday. He is still waiting to hear back on a time frame as to when his counterparts can come down here and help assist with those efforts.
Item 4H is an enhanced public records policy. Mr. Baumann to make the presentation.
Council, it's not going to be much of a presentation since we've already gone over it individually. I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Anyone have any questions about our enhanced public records policy? Mr. Destin?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to support this. This is, I think, dovetails into what we've been doing as a council for the last several years, especially recently with the development review system software, and then we've spent, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of man hours in measuring our old documents by the truckload to get them digitized. And we're doing that, one, to have a more nimble and transparent and accountable government, but we also have obligations under Chapter 119 that we have to meet, and so this is a part of all of that to where we can make sure that we are the most transparent and accountable government in the state of Florida, and so I support this completely.
Mr. Braden.
Yeah, to say that I was extremely aggravated or mad when it came out in the paper about the council violating this public's records or whatever, because me personally, I haven't done nothing wrong, nothing at all. So it wasn't council as far as I'm concerned. It wasn't me.
Yeah, and for the public, Mr. Brazier is referring to a public records request and some legal wrangling that our attorneys are having to deal with now. During the course of that, some of the information that was requested, I was tardy in that public records request, I think back in May, because the people requesting it were the people I was in conversation with, and they are.
Let's not talk about pending litigation on the dais.
Okay.
Okay. All
right. So anyway, so if there was anything that people were concerned about, it wasn't between any of these council members or myself. That I can guarantee you.
Mr. Baumann, is there a recommended motion to adopt a policy?
Yes, there's a resolution that goes along with the policy, and the policy is attached as Exhibit A. So
I can make that motion. I move to approve Resolution 19-27 and adopt the enhanced public records, record retention and records disposition policy attached to Resolution 19-27 as Exhibit A.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Ayes have it, so moved.
Finally, Mr. Mayor, I have a few announcements. The offices will be closed on Monday, November the 11th, in observance of Veterans Day. Oh, I'm trying to skip Joey, and my apologies. I was so intense on getting these announcements made that I almost forgot Joey. So my
I
apologies.
saw Joey putting his feet up on the table when you started that discussion.
So, sorry, Joey. We have Mr. Forgione here to give the year-end summary for code compliance and the activities that went on during this past summer. Sorry, Joey.
No problem, sir. Thank you. Mayor, Council, if you remember a year ago, I told you I'm going to try and move this unit back, into the next future, to the 21st century. I want to thank my code officers for, the hard work. They've dug in the trenches, and they did the best they could throughout the season, and did the best they could to get compliance and to get everything we can get that we get bringing you tonight. Just to let you know, we're kind of warming up. We're just stretching, getting ready for the future. So that's where we're heading with everything. This is your code, the state of the code for 2019 season. This is a snapshot of everything that was done. This also is going to entail for some of the visioning that you might help you during visioning session in a couple days. Just remember, this reflects the uses. The uses of the codes must fit like a glove, as discussed as the flume in the zoning maps. So it has to just fit like a glove, just like your zoning map. All right, so in 2018, if you see, the code cases were 2586. And then your activities were 4665. I'm sorry, I don't got my glasses tonight. So I'm going to have to watch on this the best I can. And then if you look over at the next, it got 4640 is your code cases, and your activities within the code cases are 6693 for your fiscal year 2019. Next slide, please. Your code stats, your registrations, total registrations, this is your beach vendors, your rentals, your liveries, your long-term rentals. 1894, your cases were 2746, was 62%. Registrations 1894, your short term is 1010, your liveries 450, 41 beach vendors, and long term was 393. Next slide. Code stats, notice of violations 302, notice of hearings 81, order imposing fines was 6, which gave you a compliance rate of 98.01. Next slide. Code citation stats, 169 citations were issued. 163 of those were warnings. Out of that, 169.6 were monetary with a 96.45 compliance rate. Parking violations. Now, I broke them a lot up north and south, so you can see where a lot of your assets are being flexed. Your north, 240, 15%, and the northern of 98. Southern 98 is 1310, which is 85%. Next slide. Parking violations 1550, your residential 240. Beach accesses. This is your violations at your beach accesses was 207. Your park rangers helped us out a lot on that. I tried to do the best I could to keep track of that as well. Short-term rentals approximately was 1,117. That's warnings and citations. Next. Parking citations were your 14%, 1% of your 1550. 1536 was your parking warnings with your compliance rate of 99%. Next slide, please. Trash, north of 98 was 43, south of 98 was 200, 82%. Yeah, sorry about that. Noise violations, 33. Short-term rentals, there was 9. North of 9810, south of 98 was 14. Next slide. Stop works. There was 198 stop works issued. North of 98, there was 86. South of 98, 112. Sign complaints. There was 553 signs. Miscellaneous was 213. Signs collected, 235. STR violations for the signs was 105. I did throw in the sheriff's office numbers. This gave you what their totals are. I was able to break them down. Lieutenant Fulgen was able to supply me with this, and then I broke them down in there. This kind of shows you north, south. I broke it down, and your STRs as well. Next slide. I did break the snapshot for each of your units. Remember, we did a beach enforcement. So we'll go through the beach enforcement. Go ahead. This is kind of what we dealt with. You got your signs and you got your chairs. Go ahead, sir, ma'am. This is just give you show you where we're, our process map. This is what it takes to register them. Next slide. Beach vendor registrations, 31 businesses, 41 locations. This is kind of hard to see in here, but there was 513 activities. This is your breakdown. If you notice, you got 20-foot violations. There's 130. You can look inside there and you can see your further breakdown. Next slide. Beach citations. Your compliance rate is actually 69% or 69.99, not 50%. But there was 10 warnings, and 5 of the 15 were monetary. Next slide. In here, I'll just zip through these real quick. These are challenges that we face, that as code we face. And then the next slide will show you the recommendations. And this is where it'll help us during our visioning or as we move forward into 2020. Next slide, ma'am. Your harbor review. Okay, this is your process map. It just shows you, takes you from the beginning to the end. Next slide. This takes you even further, a little drawn out for you. Next slide. In the county, there's approximately 18,924 vessels registered in Okaloosa County. Out of that, right now, we have 450 of them under our livery vessel program. Next slide. Your BTRs in the harbor, you have approximately roughly 700. 20 of them are your livery vessels. Next slide. So your livery vessels by type in 2018, and then the registration fees we collected was $28,500. 2019, we have $30,125. Next slide. Last year, 2018, you had 0 enforcement. Next slide. This year, you had 1,029 activities out there. That includes your warnings for your idle speed. You gave 275, and it just breaks it down even further and gives you your percentages. Next slide. Harbor citations. He was out there. He wrote 154 citations. 153 were warnings. 1 was monetary. We gave him a compliance rate of 99.8%. Next slide. Challenges under your livery that I identified. And then, next slide. Items noted for next season to help us. And we are working with myself and Lewis, and we're working together, and we're going to be bringing some more in-depth things for the CRA to bring before you. Next slide. Short-term rental. These are some of the things we dealt with this season. Trash, and just remember our short-term rental task force is in process, and we'll be bringing you some things together here soon. So this is some of the parking that we deal with. Okay, your grandfathering was approximately 202, your modified 36, pending approvals was 15. This was at the snapshot when I took it, so 2 was denied and 9 refunds. Next slide. Currently you have 1,010 registered, NOVs 46, projected 1,056. That's the projected rentals. Rental registrations. Short-term rentals, 1,010 is probably going to be a little higher now. And then your long-term rentals, we identified 20 more, so now we're over 400 with that. Next slide. This is your process map. Takes you from the beginning to the end to get registered. Next slide. So your NOV compliance rate. There was 156 notice violations for non-registered, 153 voluntary complied. 3 of them actually wound up getting daily fines, gave you a compliance rate of 98.72%. Next slide. STR parking. You have 1,117 parking violations. Warnings were 1,103. Citations 14, gave you a compliance rate of 99% compliance rate. STR activities, this is the breakdown of everything that was in there. From your sign inspections, inspecting the signs when the officers got to go out there once they register, notice of violations, your trash, parking warnings, and your events. Next slide. And this I also broke down for the short-term rental task force was the sheriff's office complaints. This broke this down for them. Next slide, ma'am. Some challenges we face, and we're working through that. And we're going to get to that, and we'll bring that to you as well. Go to the next slide. These were some of the recommendations. And your next slide. And departmental challenge. In through my year of going through everything, I noticed some loopholes that I can work better, and I seen some where the department can move forward to better ourselves as we move forward into the next year. So these are some of the things that I've identified all the way through on each of my challenges. Go to the next slide. And here's just some more recommendations. And next slide. Now, we are going to be wearing the badges. I wanted to show you the style I came with, that I come up with. The officers that will be embroidered on their shirts. I think this will, if you remember back a year ago, I said if we look professional, we feel professional, we act professional, we'll be professional. This is part of that. Go to the next slide. We're also going to a uniform style. They'll be wearing your BDU style pants. You know, it's more durable. They'll also be wearing shorts. No more blue jeans. It goes back with your appearance. They'll be wearing the polo style shirts with the badge here on the left above their heart. Next slide. Some of the challenges, goes into your visioning. You know, I do recommend, of course, your evening coverage, looking at some of your shift rotations, rank structures, weekend coverage, clarity code, manpower, complaints. Next slide. Some of the recommendations, I was flushing them out. Must show professionalism. Where we're going to look at, this is how I'm looking at for your evening shift. Your day shift will change from 6 to 3. This is just an average, 6 to 3 and then the next shift they'll go from 2 to 11 or a 3 to 11. So we'll just flex it in that way. We won't need anybody here past midnight, I don't think, if we move in that direction. This is your recommendations as they continue. Every 3 months they'll rotate. Your evening shift will rotate to a day shift. Your day shift will run to a evening shift unless you find somebody that wants to stay on evenings. Next slide. And this kind of just breaks down a little bit more for your evening shifts as we move into our visioning. And that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, Joey? Very good presentation. Obviously, kudos to your staff for all the hard work. Just something for consideration on the evening shift. Instead of doing a 3 to 12, 12 o'clock at night, especially on the weekends, is when all the fun starts, when all the noise starts. You need to have somebody working later. Maybe have a 6P to 2A or something like that, but you got to go past midnight. Okay, because again, as you will know, the sheriff's office after midnight, the witching hour. Okay, so midnight, we're not doing enough. We need to go past midnight, in my opinion.
Roger that, sir. I'll explore it through my calendars.
But again, good job, fantastic. Thank you.
Skip.
Yeah, so I don't know if I need to bring it up now or if we need to discuss it more at the visioning session, but one of the things I want to make sure that we don't let it go too long, because, you know, Joey has talked about the challenges that he's faced down there on the beach and some of the suggestions that he's come up with. I will tell you that this summer I rode along with one of his code officers down there on the beach in one of their little four-wheel vehicles, and I got to tell you, it was, and I spent most of my time on Crystal Beach. It was very eye-opening for me. I mean, I never realized that it was quite like that, because I live on Gulf Shore Drive, but Holiday Isle is nothing like what it is on Crystal Beach. I mean, that's a whole different world over there. And I don't want to compare it to, you know, to like Crab Island or anything, but I mean, things are, I think, a little bit out of control down there. And part of the problem is, of course, our visitors that come here, our tourists, they're starting to get a little bit fed up with us. Because one guy came up to me and he said, you know, I'm spending $5,000 to rent this house across the street, and I come down here and I can't find any place to go on the beach. I mean, there's all these chairs set up and all these umbrellas, and they got ropes and chains and everything up down there. And he said, I'll tell you what, he says, I'm not coming back next year. And if that spreads much further and we keep doing this to these people, they're not going to come here. And I will tell you, this town is going to be a whole lot different if we don't have our visitors every year. So, with that in mind, I don't know if I need to make a motion or if we just need, like I said, if we just need to wait till the visioning session. But I would like to see if Lance can get Joey and his code compliance folks to get with the land use attorney and see if there's what we can do to come up with some of his recommendations and how we can put that either in our codes or in our ordinances or in something that gives them more to back them up. Because I will tell you that right now they go down there and they see all these things that are going on down there, but there's really not much they can do because they don't have anything to back them up with it. There's no teeth to these ordinances that we have right now. And like Joey said, a lot of what he's trying to do is to make these people more professional and make them actually be in charge of what's going on down there. And maybe we can change some of the things that are going on down there so that our tourists and our visitors find it a lot more pleasing to come here. And so I don't know if we need to make a motion tonight for them to do that, or if you want to wait till the visioning session.
You are welcome to make a motion tonight if that's the will of the council. We can get those discussions started.
Yeah, because this is an ordinance that we're talking about here. I don't even think it really falls under the visioning session portion of it, so I think a motion be in play, and then we can have some people weigh in on it, because Joey rightly pointed out that this is a big issue. I think the challenges for our staff in writing an ordinance is going to be dealing with private property rights as part of the ordinance, so it's going to be a challenge to say the least. But I think a motion right now would be a good way to start.
Okay, so I guess I will make a motion to have the city manager direct the code enforcement or code compliance department to work with the land use attorney to develop some solutions to his challenges and some of his recommendations that he's come up with.
Second. I got a motion and a second. Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you. So I actually had one thought, and those of you that grew up here can probably answer this better than anyone. The bars here and alcohol sales essentially stop at 4, right? So is there a mad rush of people trying to party at home at 4? Or is it before 4? Is it like 2-ish? What I'm getting at is thinking about the times for code compliance. Is it better to have someone come in and work 4 a.m. to noon, or is it better for them to come in, whatever, y'all see where I'm going?
Honestly, if the bars kick them out at 4 and they go home to party, that's not a code enforcement thing. That's a sheriff's office, because they're no more than drinking alcohol.
I think there's more issues in that early evening before they actually go out, when they are hanging out at home, staging to go out. I mean, Joey might want to weigh in when it seems like he's getting most of his, because he's receiving the late night calls at the present time because his cell phone's blasted everywhere. Joey?
I think that your evening shift could cut down on the education and cut the curb of your complaints that go into your nights. They'll be able to hit your parking, some of the trash violations, some of your noise violations, and your events. They'll be able to help us identify the events and to move forward on those. An early morning shift, the reason I push 6 a.m., yes, people do go out to dinner, and we're not on after 5 p.m., so they go out to dinner, they're home by 1 or 2 in the morning, they park everywhere. Your neighbor gets up in the morning, and guess what? They see parking everywhere. So if I have someone there in the morning, then they can curb that. So if we can try and stay ahead of the game and just cut it off, I think we will be ahead of the game. I really do.
Thank you for all the information.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mitchell.
Just to follow, first of all, Skip, thank you for that motion. We definitely need to support our code compliance thing. The other thing I'll just bring up that staff is already working on, and we've talked about in the last 2 meetings, the potential for body cams for our code compliance officers as well. There's some legal challenges there, but they are looking into that because, again, some of our code compliance officers are by themselves, and then it gets into a he say, she say. So that's just something else that's in the works. It's not part of this motion. I'm just saying in addition to that, that's another thing that staff's working on that I think will help our officers.
Kyron.
2 things. One, I've talked to Lewis, and I'll probably wait and do this on the visiting session, but I have some serious questions of how we permit bedrooms and things in the Crystal Beach area, and we don't permit it all over the rest of the town for these monster houses to have these short-term rentals. But the other thing is, if I don't know how to do this with the Sheriff's Department. As far as I know, the city still has a radio frequency. And also the E-channel frequency that the Sheriff's Department uses. I think if we're going to put our code enforcement officers out there unarmed, cell phones ain't going to work. I think it would be prudent for us to look at reactivating our radio frequency and possibly having a radio that has the E-channel on it so the Sheriff's Department can be notified immediately, because I think that's, I would not want to put code compliance in a safety issue. We might have to work it out with the Sheriff's Department, but I think we really need to do that. Although cell phones are really great to have around, that radio frequency will get faster than that cell phone dialing.
Just, I have been talking with the sheriff's office on that. They are going to a new system, so it would have to wait until they go to their new system. So once they get up and running, then we can start engaging them on that. Meanwhile, if we do go to an evening shift, I can put up parameters, and I just was speaking with Jason, and we work tight right now, and their night shift would help out our guys, and they wouldn't go to, if they had to make contact at a house, they wouldn't go alone. Let's put it that way.
All right, we got a motion, got a second. And without any further discussion, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Ayes have it, so moved.
Thank you, Joey. And Joey's doing a great job facilitating the short-term rental task force too. So I just wanted to thank him in public for that. That's.
And we'll be getting a report from the STR task force pretty soon. So some of the stuff I think that Joey's bringing up is some of his challenges. Hopefully they'll come up with some answers for us to consider for legislation at that time.
So now I've got a few announcements, now that Joey's had a chance to talk. We will be closed on Monday the 11th in observance of Veterans Day. Our visioning session is scheduled for this Thursday, November the 7th at the Destin Community Center. Staff and council to arrive somewhere around 8 o'clock for continental breakfast. The actual workshop to begin somewhere around 8:45 for the public. We do have a road design project where staff has requested cost estimates from our continuing services engineering contractors. The interested ones hopefully will respond to us in a timely manner, and we will be able to bring back those cost estimates at the first meeting in December for council to take a look at and take some action on if they so desire. And so I'm not speaking in code, that would be changing the 4-lane design to a 2-lane design. Lastly, I just wanted to give you a heads up that I hope to use 3 days vacation the week of Thanksgiving, just as I did last year, if no one has any issues with that. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. All right. Now we'll move right along to 5A, which is a public hearing process. We had the second reading of ordinance 19-11-CC. Mr. Bowman.
Yes, Mayor. 5A, like you said, we have the second reading of ordinance number 19-11-CC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida relating to Election Day, providing for authority, providing for amendment of the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 9, Elections by amending Section 9-4, Election Day, providing the election day for council members and mayor to be held on the first Tuesday following the first Monday of November in each even number year, providing for reaffirmation of the candidate qualifying dates prescribed by the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 9, Elections, Section 9-8, Candidate Qualifying Dates, providing for incorporation into the Code of Ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. This is a public hearing. Council, the only update I have is since I drafted this agenda item report on Friday afternoon, we did actually receive the opinion letter from the Attorney General, and the Attorney General is of the opinion that you can move the election day to this day in November.
And I think in our briefing documents, we all got that email. At this point, this is a public hearing, and so I will open up the public hearing portion of this meeting. And is there anyone in the audience that wants to make a comment on this particular ordinance? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this. And Mr. Destin.
Yes, I'll go ahead and make the motion to adopt on second reading ordinance 19-11-CC.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second. Mr. Ramswell, did you have a comment? I hit the button wrong. No, we're good? All right, we'll see no further comment. Let's go ahead and take it to a vote. Ayes have it. So moved. Mr. Morgan, you will get to delightfully spend an extra 7 months on the council.
Thank you so much, Mayor.
Now, hey, at least you got it on the public record, Mr. Morgan. Your no vote. All right, Mr. Bowman, 5B.
Yes, we have 5B, which is the first reading of ordinance number 19-32-LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, amending the official zoning map as referenced in the Land Development Code, Section 7.12.01A2 zoning maps, to include a change in the zoning designation of the properties described and generally depicted in the attached Exhibit A from institutional, INST, and medium-density residential, MDR-V, to residential, office, and institutional village residential, ROIVR, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for jurisdiction, providing for zoning map amendment, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date, and this is a public hearing.
Thank you, sir. And at this time, I'll go ahead and open this portion of the hearing for public comment. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close this public comment period, and I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve 19-32-LC on first reading.
I got a motion.
Second.
And I have a second. Is there any further discussion on this ordinance? Seeing none? Ayes have it, unanimous, so moved. Mr. Bowman.
We have 5C, which is the first reading of ordinance number 19-33-LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, amending the official zoning map as referenced in the Land Development Code, Section 7.12.01A2, zoning maps to include a change in the zoning designation of the parcel described and generally depicted in the attached Exhibit A from residential, office, and institutional general development, ROIGD, and medium-density residential village, MDRV, to residential, office, and institutional village residential. ROIVR, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for jurisdiction, providing for zoning map amendment, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date, and this is a public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. You take a drink of water. Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Is there any, I'm going to open up the public comment portion of this public hearing. Is there anyone that wants to come to the podium? Seeing none, I'll close this portion of the hearing, the public comment period, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the recommended motion, Mayor. I move the City Council approve proposed ordinance 1933-LC on first reading.
Second.
Got a motion, and I got a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none? Votes unanimous, so moved. Mr. Bowman?
Council, we have a quasi-judicial hearing next. This is Kimley Horn on behalf of Kahuna Property LLC requesting approval of a major development order and major subdivision identified as the Charles. The proposed development consists of 192 multifamily units. The proposed project is generally located east of Big Kahuna's Water Park and west of Airport Road, addressed 1021 U.S. Highway 98. The total site area is 11.54 acres, more or less. At this time, if I get the applicant, whoever will be testifying on behalf of the applicant, to stand, and Mr. Zanguzzi, are you going to be testifying on behalf of staff? And whoever's going to be testifying, go ahead and stand, I'll swear you in. All right. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth? Yes. Okay. And applicants, when you guys come up, just go ahead and state your name for the record so that Ray can get it in. With that said, I will go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Kopp.
We will go ahead and let the applicant speak.
One at a time. Whoever wants to come up and start first.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Here today representing the applicant, Big Kahuna's LLC with the developer Core Property Group. We're here to work through 192 multifamily unit subdivision. So it's about 8-acre project. And as a part of this project, we'll be dedicating an 80-foot right-of-way with roadway to the city of Destin. And this project was rezoned approximately 12 to 16 months ago. So we're here to answer any questions, and I'll pass this off to the owner.
And make sure when you push the button, you just state your name and your address for the public record.
3915 Wentworth Drive.
Park Lambert's 5156 Meadow Lake Drive.
We were here, I guess 8 to 12 months ago a couple times. So hopefully, what you see with where we are is exactly where we said we would be. So we really don't have much else to say. Just we're here to answer any questions that you have. So it should be identical to what it is.
The yellow board is lit up, so we will start with Ms. Ramswell first.
Welcome back. I do have a question. I see that you're putting in the Mattie Kelly Road, and if I'm reading the map correctly, it's at 98, so it'll be a new junction with 98. I'm just curious because it looks like the traffic concurrency study is indicating that there's not going to be an impact there, and I'm wondering, unless I misread that, have you thought about that? Because, to me, it just seems very difficult to believe that there's not going to be an impact right there because it's already really jam-packed, and I don't know if that's something you'll do before and after.
So as part of this process, and my name is Cam Snipes, I'm with Kimley Horn, 2615 Centennial Boulevard, Suite 102. We worked with FDOT as well as local staff, and so there is a right turn lane that's going to be added as a part of this project. And that goes along with the level of service standards that deals with the traffic that is on 98 plus what our development is generating.
Will it be right turn only coming out?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. I guess that's all I have. But and perhaps our land use attorney or our community development director, is it customary that they do a traffic study before and then another one after? I know with some developments that's done.
Yes, there are phases of their review. There are phases of their review that requires that process. Yes, is to verify every assertion that they're making.
Great. Good to see y'all back.
Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. The lot that's on the front 98, it says Lot 2 on one, and it says Lot B on the other one. That's approximately 1.1 acres. You ever talking about putting some kind of retail store out there? Is that still the plan?
We don't know yet, but that is the plan. Yeah. It's prohibited from being any more residential. Yeah.
Is that part of the building on this parcel? Is that part of this development order?
No.
Okay. That'd be tough. So, okay, thanks, Mayor.
All right. There's no further questions from the council. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Now I have another question.
Oh, you do?
Not necessarily for y'all, but building on what Councilman Braden mentioned. So if there's another little section up at the front that could be developed, was that density already utilized for the main complex?
Yes, if you recall, at the early time when you did the rezoning, you held the total zoning for the entire parcel, 11 acres, to 192. So it cannot be used for residential.
So it would have to be some other use in the
Correct.
multi-use scope of, okay,
Correct.
gotcha, thanks.
And more importantly, going back to the question that you raised earlier about the phases, this is just a preliminary phase of the review process. So they'll be coming back for the final review.
And so now we entertain a motion. It's already there.
Public comment?
All right, I'll do that now. Does anyone here would like to come to the podium and have any comments on this proposed development? Seeing none, I'm going to close
I'll
the
make
public
the
comment.
motion.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I move to approve the major development order and major subdivision identified as the Charles.
I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any further discussion amongst council? Seeing none? Vote is unanimous, so moved. Congratulations, gentlemen. All right. Item number 6A. Can I have a motion?
I'll make the recommended motion that we adopt the consent agenda.
I have a motion.
I'll second it.
I have a second. Is there any discussion on the membership appointment of the Destin Youth Council? Seeing none at this time, take it to vote. Vote is unanimous, so moved. Moving on to number 7, comments and presentations. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. I noticed a couple days ago that they are striping 98 from Airport Road to the Marler Bridge. They're striping it for a bicycle lane, and I thought the council voted to not have a bicycle lane. That was a
5-2 vote. Parker and I voted against it.
But I thought we voted.
I'll send you the article. There were 3 different proposals they sent us. One was narrow one lane, leave another lane 14 feet.
Right.
With open bike lane. The other was a bike lane, and then the other was what we're getting, which was past 5-2. And then the other proposal was to leave it the same.
Yeah, it was back in 2016. It was like the second or third meeting we had. I remember Chatham telling us about his hostess that's been hit by a car on her bike like 3 or 4
Yeah,
times.
she walked to work 2 miles every day, and I said, well, why do you walk to work? And she said, I said, why don't you ride a bike? She said, I've been hit by a car 3 times. And so I said, that's a fair point. I'd walk to work too.
I thought it was that we decided not to go with the bicycle lane. We decided to go with one lane wider than the other.
I wasn't here.
Oh, convenient for you, Mayor. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's 5-2.
Okay.
I ride my bike everywhere, and I haven't been hit yet. But
Get on the highway.
I'm not too sure I'll ride.
Where do
on
you
98.
ride?
I don't ride on 98.
Our undergrounding the utilities from Gulf Power, do we have any updates on that?
Yeah, we've got a meeting on November the 19th.
19th at 1:30.
Yeah, and it's an open meeting, so I invite everybody to come because
We have noticed it.
yeah, there's strength and solidarity in numbers.
Awesome, thank you. And maybe somebody from staff can tell me why we're cutting down large crepe myrtle trees on 98 and the large fruit tree at the old campground?
conferred with staff concerning the crepe myrtles by Cracker Barrel. I believe those are the ones you're referring to.
Yes, sir.
Those crepe myrtles, we had a request from, I can't remember the billboard vendor, but they requested that we trim those trees. Starts with an L, I can't remember the. Either way, that really doesn't matter. That really doesn't matter. But we had a request, repeated request to have those trees trimmed, and our Deputy Director of Public Services decided to go ahead and kind of address that situation because we had gone out there a few times the year prior. That was a mistake. It was against city policy, and that has been addressed, as has the incident with the grapefruit tree over on Beach. We are putting in new processes to ensure that something like that would never happen again.
What happened with the grapefruit tree?
Same thing happened with the crepe myrtles that need to be trimmed, and they trimmed it to the
Well,
ground.
the report I received was that fruit was being dropped onto the sidewalk, and that there was a concern concerning pedestrian safety and bicycle safety. And then it was growing.
We live in the most dangerous highway in the country, and we're worried about fruit on sidewalks.
He's just giving a report, so.
I know, I got it. I'm just saying, like.
So don't shoot our messenger.
No, I'm not. But we
Pair
cut
this
down.
with the airport road rail.
We cut down pine trees, beautiful old 50, 60, 80-year-old pine trees. The city did, and this is when the other guy was here.
David Campbell.
Yeah, and Campbell told me, well, the roots were, they weren't even on the sidewalk. They were like in a grassy area, and he said that the roots proposed a tripping hazard. And I'm just thinking, public said that we're worried about tree roots and grapefruits falling on sidewalks when Highway 98 is right there. That's misplaced priorities.
I agree. I was getting phone calls, I think, as they were actually cutting that grapefruit tree down. Grant writer, where do we stand with the grant writer? I'm working with Karen from HR and the web. The three of us have put together the job description, and we hope to have it out this week. This week? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And I know that we had discussed, or you had discussed in the past couple of months about moving our engineering department under the same roof as the planning department. What is your feelings on that? And I don't know if we need to get the council's consensus on this as well. I know I would like to see it moved under the same roof or under the planning department. City manager, you have a comment on that? Absolutely. We finally got our engineer in at the beginning, within the past 4 weeks. He's just getting settled in, and it was always my intention to take a look at, once we've got the city engineer in place, to take a look at if we should leave them under the public services header or move them somewhere else. They could, originally when I started with the city, they were independent, they were their own department. So we had that option along with moving them under community development as the other option. All three of them are done at different places throughout the country. I'm still looking at it. I still think it's probably a good idea to look at moving that position under community development. Right now, timing-wise, I need some time to figure out logistics to make that happen. And so I'm just not prepared to pull the trigger, so to speak, right now, because I don't have an office. We need to do some logistical planning. I need to find some office space and make some arrangements and have some discussions with multiple department heads who would be impacted by this move.
Do you have a recommendation, or what are you leaning towards, Mr. Braden?
I'm leaning toward making a motion on this, see if we can't speed this process up a little bit. I guess I will. I'll see how the council feels about it.
I'm going to go ahead and make a recommended motion to move the engineering department under the community development department.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion, we got a second. Any discussion on the matter?
I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button. I meant request first.
No, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Clearly, this would fall under Lewis's purview, and is this something that has been discussed? I mean, is this going to overburden you? Is this something that you're happy with or will consider?
The manager and I, when I started work here, we discussed the best operational configurations of the department. That's clearly one thing that we did identify. From my experience, going back 25 years or so, the key core functions of development review are planning and zoning services, building services, and engineering services. So if you are one that's interested in ensuring that there is optimum efficiencies in terms of timeliness of decision-making and delivery of service, as well as the components for streamlining processes, it would stand to reason that you put all those things under one management. However, that's a decision that the manager needs to make depending on other considerations that he has to make. I'm just giving you a manager's operation from the area of expertise that I'm charged with.
I appreciate it, thank you. So with the motion, do you intend for it to be like, do it now, or do it once you've sorted out the logistical issues?
Can we get stuff sorted out within 30 days?
I can try to. It will involve shifting several people to new locations to make it work with our existing facilities.
Yeah, so that's your biggest challenge, Lance, is just strictly a logistical issue to move these people from this office to those offices, so you have them in the same geographical location to make it more efficient, correct?
Yep, that's right.
So that's his challenge, probably why it hasn't moved any quicker.
I'll add that to the motion to be done in 30 days.
There you go, got timeline, got wiggle room. I've got a couple of people that want to speak on this. Mr. Marler.
Thank you, Mayor. Best way to put this is let the city manager do his job. If he can't get it in 30 days, there's going to be reasons why. I think the council, we sometimes push some issues. I realize that we need to do what we need to do, and I agree with Mr. Braden about the possibility of the engineering, but Lewis and the city manager have it together. So, I mean, I think the city manager should be allowed to try to do it as soon as he can, but not put a time limit on it. There may be other logistical things that we don't know about yet.
Mr. Menchel, go ahead. I hit the wrong button.
I was going to bring up about a date certain, maybe 30 days, maybe too soon, but we need to do a date certain, because if not, we'll be talking about this next year. I would just offer a consideration to Mr. Braden, since it is a rush thing, to at least do it by the end of the year. Give him enough time, because there are some logistical challenges. But we need to do it. We need to do a date certain, so we're not talking about this again next year. I just offer that as a suggestion to maybe make it by end of year, if that's something you consider.
Go ahead, Mr. Destin.
Thanks. You know, I own my own business, and at the end of the day, I appreciate Mr. Zanguzzi's enthusiasm to take on the responsibility. I echo the sentiment of the council members who have spoken before me that stated that they believe that this is a good idea. I agree with the date certain. 30 days may be enough, but it might not be, but we're going to get the ball rolling sooner than later if we put a date certain. I'd also agree with the notion that we are putting more work onto Mr. Zanguzzi's plate. So, Rodney, would you be okay with amending your motion to include a parameter that gives the attorney and our city manager the ability to discuss Mr. Zanguzzi if we have to pay him more, because this is added responsibility, just so that we can be fair to all parties, because, you know, there are real workload consequences to shifting this stuff. So I want to make sure Mr. Zanguzzi is not being taken advantage of by just a unilateral decision for us to move it through, but I support it completely.
I took that in consideration, was going to bring that up.
Okay.
You know, at a later date, maybe once it was moved, but I'll go ahead and add that to the motion, tonight's
Great.
motion.
Thanks.
We have a friendly amendment to that motion. Is that okay with the person that seconded it? We do. I still have some more.
Guys, according to our charter, isn't that a city manager decision?
What's that?
Pay?
Pay for what?
Kyle, hold on.
For the department heads and such?
We set the budget.
I mean, we can suggest it, but we can't direct that.
I think if it comes as a suggestion, I don't think that Mr. Braden's motion is saying increase his pay by $20,000. I took it as a suggestion.
I agree, but we're not that decision maker.
Right, as long as it's not being made to us as a mandate, I think that Mr. Johnson's administrative capabilities have not been impaired.
Mr. Morgan?
No, it's not. It's a charter.
Couple of things. One, and this is kind of procedural, we're making motions and kind of getting away from making motions during the council's comment section without it being published. And while I think it's a great idea, I really want to know what the staff thinks of it, and the charter does kind of lay it out that administration is left to the staff. And so I feel like, you know, I would like to see a staff report on this, and y'all get together and bring us something to vote on as a formal agenda item. And I kind of am with Kyron on the 30-day notice. I don't like setting these time constraints, because if this does pass, I know, you know, if Lance doesn't get it done in 30 days, you know, I trust Lance. When I voted him to do this job, I put my trust in him. I trust him to get the job done, and if it takes longer than 30 days, I'm sure there's a reason why.
And my last comment, I don't get to vote on this, but we got to be careful here that we're not trying to micromanage the administrative side of things. The suggestions are fine, but with the motion and a mandate to do X at X amount of time is wavering on violating our charters. And I don't think any of us here really are aware of the office space issues or those kind of things that Lance probably deals with on all day. So I think in this particular case, I think the intent, but Mr. Braden's intent is good, and it sounds like Mr. Zangui agrees with it, that that's probably the best system to operate under. But I think in this particular case, we just need to, I think the message from the council is clear of the direction we want to go, but the timelines and that kind of thing, I think is a little harsh at this moment, because we're not fully aware of how many offices are available, how much room we have, computers, chairs, desks, and all that other issue. But Mr. Braden, go ahead.
I mean, with that motion, if it just can't happen in 30 days, I would expect the city manager to come back and say, look, you know, we got this, and this place, but we need 2 more weeks, 3 more weeks, and, you know, surely that's going to be granted. You know, but I just like to put a time frame on it so we just keep it moving. Thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Morgan.
Don't we have to set aside the order of the day to, I'm uncomfortable making motions that haven't been published and sat down and discussed by staff, because what they say here might be
He's right.
different than what they put in a well-thought-out agenda report. But
I make the motion to set aside the order of the day.
Second. I have a motion, I have a second. Let's go ahead and take a vote on that. Ayes have it, so moved. Proceed. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. We've had discussion. Any further discussion, any of the council members? Seeing none, let's vote. Ayes have it, so moved. Mr. Braden, is that it for tonight? You got some more stuff?
Hang on.
Dang it. Clear me, Ray.
Do we have an update on the Heritage Park? On how we're coming with that?
Yes, I am working on the language we discussed at the prior meeting with the U.S. Treasury, and Lance has directed the new city engineer to work on the scope of services for the RFP package as well. So we are all doing our parts working on that.
Lance, do you have anything on the engineer? Is he up to speed on that?
On the new park?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah, he's putting the specs together and then plans to merge that with the work that Kim's doing on it so that we're ready to roll.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I read somewhere about the was it the community center generator? Putting a new motor in that?
That was the city hall generator.
That's what I said, the city hall generator?
Yep, city hall generator. Turns out that our insurance is going to cover all but our deductible, which was $5,000, I believe, if I remember correctly.
How old is that generator?
It's a 2007 model.
Oh, man. That's it. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. Ms. Ramswell.
So I just wanted to send out, because sometimes we sit up here and it's easy to pick and, point out things that need correcting, but I also want to point out some things that I've been very pleased about. I had asked for someone to look into bike lane sweeping because I had gotten a report from a biking group around town that it was very dirty and they were, the bikes were hitting rocks and all sorts of debris and everything. And I want to thank y'all for taking care of that. I know Lance reached out to staff and staff reached out to the proper people, and they are on top of that. And I reported that back to the biking group, and they were thrilled to see that y'all were actually on top of it as quickly as you were, and I thank you too. Similarly, I remember at the last meeting we had talked about the right-of-way being unmowed and how unkempt it looked. And I noticed like within 3 days that at least one section of it had been mowed. And then within a few days, they had gone even further down. So I don't know if that was coincidence or what it was. And with that, so thank you again for getting on top of it. And then I had noticed that there were some follow-up concerns that didn't seem to make sense. And I know that, Lance, I believe it was you that had said you were going to follow up with the county. They said something about we do them as we get them or something, and sometimes 50 days, and I just wanted clarification to make sure that the right-of-ways are on a regular schedule to be mowed, and they're not sitting around waiting on a complaint before they do it. So thanks for getting on that. Also, the Joe's Bayou Environmental Report. We had the citizen here earlier that had spoke a few council meetings back and had concerns about it, and I thank y'all for getting on top of that as well. Webb, thank you for reporting to me tonight about the right-of-way issue over Henderson Resort right there at Matthew and 98. I know he updated me and let me know that we are digging into that to find out if there was an issue with the right-of-way, whether there was not. They're digging into that and looking into it further. And then the other thing is also the trimming of the shrubs at the exit there by the Goodwill. I've received a report that has also been taken care of, so it's clear to see coming in and coming out. And I know the folks that go back and forth in there, especially some of the employees back there, were thrilled to be able to see to get out again. So thanks for really getting on top of those things and taking care of it. It's wonderful to get the feedback and not wonder and have to ask and get things. So it's wonderful to have it coming back this way. Thank you for that. I had mentioned during my meeting with Buzz Eddy that I wanted to look into some sort of beach committee, a joint committee. And perhaps this is something we can discuss at visioning on Thursday. Maybe it's proper for another council meeting, but whatever y'all think, I'll handle it there. But I wanted to look at getting some vendors, some residents, a council member or the mayor, whoever, but a group of folks from different areas, the land use attorney for sure, because number one, I think we need an all come to Jesus, if you will, about trying to determine what rules are there, what is in place, what do we need to do, who's, in charge of what area, what is allowable, what is not. Are we doing the 20-foot from mean high tide? Are we not? What is the customary use status? All those questions that nobody seems to be on the same page. I'd like us to have this joint committee for everybody to talk about this and be on that same page going into the next season. So if that's appropriate to bring up and discuss at a future council meeting, or whether y'all think it's visioning, I'm happy with either one, but I'd like it to get on some schedule.
Well, I think we talked earlier in today's meeting about the
Similar.
staff putting together an ordinance. What you're talking about is a little bit more with
Yeah,
like a
it's more
short-term,
interactive
like a
and-
short-term rental task force where we get a wide variety of citizens to weigh in.
Almost a brief back, what happened this year, what do we need to look for, how are we going to address this?
I think that'd be a
literally
good
working
agenda
together.
item versus our visioning session. I think that
Code
should be.
enforcement also I meant to
Yeah.
include in that.
Maybe let's go ahead and get that on our next agenda, and that gives everybody time to think about that, and we can come up with some ideas of what we would want that committee to look like, who would participate, and what we'd expect to get out of it. I think that's an excellent idea.
That
If
works
that's
for
okay
me.
with everyone else, we'll just go ahead and put that on the agenda for our next meeting.
Yep.
Do you want nominations for the next agenda, or just,
I think just for discussion purposes, and we can elaborate and discuss then, the path forward. And then I believe that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell.
First of all, at 98 and Triumph, that light is blinking yellow and red, yellow on 98 respectively, and red in Triumph. And I guess I can tell you, I have seen repeatedly people coming up to the intersection, slowing down and stopping, because it is a yellow light. And there's absolutely no reason for that light to be blinking yellow.
Where? Where's
It-
Steve? Which one?
Triumph and 98.
Which one's Triumph?
Home Depot.
Uh-huh.
By the car wash, by Otto's Car Wash. They come out there and there's nothing, they can't go across, okay, on the other side. I just think we ought to talk to FDOT about that, a contractor, because they got those new lights on, they turned them on, and it serves no purpose, okay? It just causes traffic, that's another issue that causes traffic to slow down on 98. Regarding the generator, a month ago, when we had the issues with the contracts and we pulled some of them from the consent agenda, we had several different contracts come back to us last meeting that we voted on, but we haven't heard anything back about our generator contract. That was one that we pulled. We asked for it to be bidded out. What's the status of the generator contract?
The bid openings are Thursday.
I beg your pardon?
Thursday, November 7th at 2 o'clock.
Okay. And then the generator that Rodney spoke about, the generator that we were repairing, did it just break? Was there an issue with it, or what happened?
Yeah, apparently at some point, it's tested once a week. It threw some trouble codes back. It's monitored remotely by Ronco. It threw a trouble code, and when they went over there, apparently the head gasket had blown and coolant had gotten into the engine, and it seized.
Okay. City Manager, I'd like you to, if you could answer this. We had talked about a little bit earlier about contracts. And this is a question I'd like to get some answers to, so we're better off to discuss at our vision session. When we let a contract out, regardless what the contract is for service, a termite man's supposed to come in here and spray for termites. I'm just, whatever it might be, just whatever type of contract. I'm just trying to understand the process and the procedure, okay? Do we have anything in place right now where somebody from staff verifies that that work was actually done? Any kind of contract, not just public, it could be for anything.
Yes, sir, we do have processes in place, like for sidewalk installation, for example. We do have a verification of the work being completed and the site being clean before we'll pay an invoice. In addition to the one you're referring to, and it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier with the irrigation, we do have staff members that that go along with the staff from the contractor, and they also do independent audits and inspections themselves.
Okay, so when you approve something, walk me through the process. If it's a public works contract, what do you do to tell the finance department it's okay to pay?
Concrete's a great example. Let's just say we had a section of sidewalk replaced, removed and replaced. Once that work has been finished, the Deputy Director, Tim Paul, will sign his initials and write OK on it, that he's physically gone out and verified that the work has been done. Okay. Now, that's not true in every case, because we do have quite a few contracts, but that's a great example of a process we use to kind of QA, QC the product that we're being delivered.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Oberdehr.
Nothing tonight,
Mayor. Mr. Marlar.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Mr. Destin.
Nothing tonight.
Mr. Morgan.
I still can't get over we cut down trees because they drop fruit on the sidewalk, but if we could not do that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Is that it? All right, well, I normally don't have anything, but tonight, driving here to the meeting, I was coming around the corner and I noticed a whole bunch of people in the dog park in the dark. Daylight savings time got them. Because now at 5 o'clock when they're getting home and their puppies need to go out for their normal evening walk in the dog park, I guess folks just don't have any recourse. They just grab a flashlight and go to the dog park. So, with that being said, is there a reason we don't have lights in the dog park, or we just never had them and nobody's noticed it?
Lisa is typing the park supervisor right now. I can tell you that.
I mean, it was just,
There are lights in the dog park.
yeah, they're all out right at the time. So I didn't know if we were going to have to go out there and provide some lighting for them. But daylight savings time got all them, and there was a number of people, at least 30 people on both parks, and because I was wondering, like, what are all those lights? And it was folks with flashlights walking their dogs after work, and it was about 5:20. And it's pitch black now at 5:20. So I just want to bring that up, staff, if we could just light up the dog park a little bit. That's all I got. Ms. Kopp?
Just one thing quickly. We have a fairly significant number of short-term rental Burt Harris claims. And so it was suggested to me by the mayor that we, instead of putting them on various regular city council agendas and extending those meetings, if we could hold a special meeting for them. Lance and I talked about potentially the second Monday in December, the 9th, so I just wanted to run that by you to see. Basically, the way we'd present them is with a staff recommendation and a proposed settlement, and then you all would decide if settlement was appropriate or not, and if staff recommended no settlement, then that would also be something for you to consider.
It was a sheer, when she held up the stack, hold the stack up, Kim.
I already carried them to my car.
When she held up the stack, I'm like, oh my God, that's a meeting in of itself. And that's when I thought of that. It won't be a workshop because we have to take action, just a special meeting to address all these Burt Harris claims. And that way, if anyone has discussion based on their recommendations, we're not pressed with other business. We can stay focused just strictly on the Burt Harris claims. So,
and one of the reasons for the stack was because the appraisals are pretty lengthy. So one appraisal is about half an inch thick, so it looks a little bit worse than it is, but still it would delay a regular city council meeting, so we could have a special meeting for them.
Is everybody okay with that date? Okay, so let's go ahead and...
Do you all want 6 o'clock or 5:30?
6 o'clock?
6 o'clock on December 9th.
I would have to assume unless we have some controversy, that it'd probably be an hour and 30-minute meeting, depending if we get any more between now and then. But I think that's going to be the way to go, and that way we're zeroed in on just that issue and taking care of business. Is everybody okay with that? All right. Is that all you have, ma'am?
That's it, thank you.
And when we're done, Kyle, I'm going to go ahead and give opportunity for anybody in the audience to come up and have public comment.
You can go for it, because I got nothing.
All right, does anyone have any comments they'd like to make before I go ahead and adjourn this meeting? Seeing none, meeting adjourned.